in person. So before we start our normal meeting, we have a special forum workshop to address and discuss the new cannabis law. We're not going to make any decisions tonight. We're just going to address some of the issues that have been presented to us as a community. We're going to hear from our expert on the law, and then we're open it up to questions. And this will be the first of a number of meetings. So I don't want anyone to feel that decisions will be made today when they will not. So welcome. If you'll just step up, identify yourself, where you're from, who you are, and then we can start.
Did we
lose the video or
No,
what?
I just switched to the camera to the podium. There's a little delay in between, so there's a black screen.
Okay,
I can see myself over there. I'll try not to scare myself too much.
I understand.
Yeah.
I've been there.
Pretty frightening. Thank you, Mayor. My name is Jim Landau. I'm an attorney at McCarthy Fingar LLP in White Plains. I'm also a member of the New York State Bar Association Cannabis Law Committee, founder and co-chair of the Westchester County Bar Association Cannabis Law Committee, and I'm a director of and co-chair of the Regulatory Committee for the Hudson Valley Cannabis Industry Association. So I've been doing a lot of studying relating to the MRTA over the last couple of years as it's gone through the process of being passed, and have played some small part in certain aspects of the law. Cannabis use and has been omnipresent and is inevitable, always was inevitable. And the important thing that we've been trying to do is to make sure that it's properly regulated and of course taxed. So let me just give you a brief overview of the MRTA, which stands for the Marijuana Regulation and Taxation Act that was passed at the end of March. And then we can open it up to questions if people have any. I'm just here to provide information. The act makes it legal for, it actually modifies the penal law to allow adults, any individual over 21 years of age. So if you're under 21, it's still illegal to possess, display, purchase, obtain, or transport up to 3 ounces of cannabis and up to 24 grams of concentrated cannabis. And it also allows people over the age of 21 to transfer without compensation to another person 21 or older up to 3 ounces of cannabis and up to 24 grams of concentrated cannabis. The law creates a whole regulatory scheme which starts with the Office of Cannabis Management, which is an independent agency, but it will be within the purview of the Alcohol Beverage Control Department at the state level. The OCM will have an executive director and it will have an equity director. Neither of those positions have been filled yet, and you'll see that that's going to be a theme as I go through the various other agencies that are involved. Another agency that's been enacted, but again has not been staffed, is something called the Cannabis Control Board. The Cannabis Control Board is going to be the agency that operates the industry. They're going to be coming up with license applications. They're going to be approving the licenses. They're going to be holding hearings and things. They're going to be determining for violations of the law. They're going to be in charge of taxing, collecting the taxes, and most importantly, issuing the rules and the regulations that are going to be providing the flesh on the skeleton of the law that we have right now. The CCB is going to be a 5-member board, and it's going to be appointed by the governor's going to appoint the chair. The governor gets, I think, 2 other appointments on the board. And the other 2 will be coming from the legislature and the Senate and the state assembly as well. None of those positions have been filled yet. There will also be a cannabis advisory board, which is a 13-member organization that's supposed to be made up of people in a very diverse way, crossing all lines of race, gender, and geography. So you'll have people from city areas, you'll have people from the country, more rural areas, and they will be advising the CCB, the Cannabis Control Board, on all manner of things. There will be a number of licenses that will be issued, types of licenses that will be issued under the law. They range from pretty much every aspect of the industry, starting at growing. So there'll be a cultivation license. There will be a processing license, a distribution license. There will be a dispensary license. There will be on-site consumption licenses. And there will be delivery licenses. There will be micro business licenses, which is like, if you think about the private label vineyards out in Napa, that will be a fully vertically integrated business that will allow someone holding that license to grow, manufacture, distribute, and dispense their own product, but nobody else's. There are licenses for laboratories. There's licenses for nurseries. There's all kinds of licenses. They're also going to be, and more particular for municipalities like the village, there is, as I'm sure everyone's read about, an opt-out provision in the law that gives the village until the end of this year the ability to opt out. And the way you do that is by enacting a law, local law, which is subject to permissive referendum that would opt out, and you can choose to opt out from either from both dispensaries and on-site consumption lounges, or either. You can always opt back in by repealing that law. But if you do not opt out by the end of this year, you're deemed to be in. Okay, so now let's get to the money. So there's a 13.
Can I ask a question? Does that mean if you don't opt out, then you can never opt out again? You're opted in forever?
Correct. Talking about taxation, there's a 13% sales tax that I think is allocated between at the distribution level and the retail level. Of that 13%, 4% is allocated to the county and to local villages and towns. That's done in a 3-to-1 percentage. So the county gets 1%, and the remaining 3% goes to the village in proportion to the amount of retail sales they're allowing. So if you're not in, you're going to get 0 from the sales tax. But if you're in, you're going to get 3% of the tax that comes in on that, of the 13%.
So we get 3% of all product that's sold in Dobbs Ferry.
Basically, that's correct. Yes.
With 3% of 13%.
Okay. I'm very bad at math. So if you sell an ounce, let's say it's $100, and on top of that, there's $13, right? It's 13% tax. So you'll get $3 from that $100 sale if it's done in Dobbs Ferry. What else should I tell them? Anything else? I think that's the most important stuff. That's basically the overview.
Can you just talk about, I mean, if we opt out and the residents want us to address it, there is like a referendum. How does that work?
Yeah, I mean, Lori Lee, you want to speak on that? She's the one most up on the village. Sure. I'll sit down.
Hi, good evening.
Identify yourself, please, for the record.
I'm Lori Lee Dixon of the law firm McCarthy Fingar, and I'm the Village Board of Trustees Council.
I thought you were familiar.
I just haven't seen any of you in so long, so it's so nice to have this opportunity. Yes, and the referendum would be for the any local law passed before the end of the year would be subject to a permissive referendum. So if you were to opt out for one and again, the opt-out is just for the retail sales and for on-site consumption. Those are the two licenses within local control. The other licenses, there's a preemption and the state covers that, just like with sales of alcohol and tobacco. So in this case, the opt-out provision is available through the end of the year, and you can opt out one, both, or none. And if you choose not to pass the local law to opt out, you're automatically opted in to both retail sales and on-site consumption. That being said, there are appropriate time, place, manner of operations that you can control as a local board through your zoning code. So there are many other jurisdictions that have that you could learn from to understand the depth of the zoning laws that would be available to you. If you opt out by the end of the year, the referendum provisions in village law, New York State village law, provide that you must provide 30 days within which a challenge can be posed in writing, taking the form of a petition. And that petition has mandatory statutory requirements. And I know your clerk, Liz Draper, recently attended a seminar on referendums in general. So we would be guided by the election rolls, the voting rolls here. You would have to determine if the petition was signed by a sufficient number of petitioners. And that would force the question to be added to a ballot measure, subject to the entire registered voters of the village. And that would be, now that the time is such at this point in the summer, that would be by virtue of a special election. So they could challenge your local law for opting out of one or both. And then the question would be posed to the residents at large on a ballot, whether they would want to reverse your decision to opt out of those two licenses. If you opt out by local law, no challenge is posed, and your local law then says you will not be participating in retail sales, on-site retail sales, and on-site public consumption. If you were later to decide for any reason that you wanted to opt back into the licensing of those two aspects of this strategy, then that would be subject to a permissive referendum. You would need to match the level of review to opt back in. So that would mean if you wanted to repeal your opt-out for one or both of those licenses, you would, by virtue of holding a public hearing, passing a local law, you would have to put that out for 30 days to allow a petition to be mounted to challenge your repeal. So either way, the statute requires a certain level of additional notice opportunity for petitioners. And these would be for the registered voters on the rolls here in the village.
What if you opt in? Is there a procedure for a referendum if we opt in?
I'm sorry, I didn't.
If we opt into the law, can the public do a referendum on that? So the majority of the residents want us to opt out?
No, if you choose not to act before the end of the year to opt out, you're automatically in on both of those license programs. It's an automatic, you're automatically available, making the village available for on-site consumption and for retail sales, dispensaries.
Who pays for the election? Is the village?
Yes.
So we can, by virtue of the zoning laws, decide that we would not, for whatever reason, if we don't want it downtown or we want it in a certain place, we can do that.
With valid zoning laws, and there are certain levels of review for all zoning laws. They would have to be rational, reasonable, and based upon the fact that this is a new commercial enterprise, and certainly it's a cash business. By virtue of that alone, you could put certain restrictions on this use in your zoning code.
But you can't zone the business out of existence. You
Right.
can't make it impossible, opt in, and then make it impossible to have a dispensary. The other thing, other bit of input that you get as a village that's in is that any applicant for a dispensary or on-site consumption lounge in the village would have to give, before they even apply to the state, would have to give the village notice ahead of time of their application. And then the Cannabis Control Board is going to give the village an opportunity to be heard on that application during the application process.
Can we limit the number of dispensaries?
With a rational and reasonable basis, that's possible. Again, this is where we're having these are the areas of the law that are evolving. But again, you would have the benefit of knowing what's withstood zoning challenges in other jurisdictions, with similar permissions and similar licenses. So, Massachusetts has been doing this for a while. Colorado's been doing this for a while. So this aspect of it would need some further study. And to look at the reasonableness of what the zoning restriction would be. But it's possible for us to look into whether the volume of dispensaries and, that's.
Would we be able to change the zone if we opt in? And people start applying for licenses or whatever, would we then later be able to limit the zoning on something? Or
You can always
somebody's already established in a zone that we haven't.
Right. Well, you can amend your local laws by other local laws. So I would imagine there would be questions as to grandfathering and impacts. And, in much the same way you would zone another use, say a bar restaurant use or an outdoor lounge use or a liquor store. Yeah, for example. Yeah, you might want to down the road for some reason or another, move the zones or move the criteria in the zones to based upon personal experience. That's always possible, but there would be a vested rights question that would have to be looked at in each individual case.
And there may be more guidance to come once the rules and regulations are issued by the Cannabis Control Board.
So do you think, like you just alluded to, there aren't that many, there's no specifics about it at all. So,
Right.
but yet we have to make a decision without knowing the specifics, right?
The specifics would be based upon experiences in other jurisdictions. But of course, the New York law, New York state law, the MRTA is very unique. It has also been drafted based upon the experiences in these other jurisdictions. And it's a very complete licensing program. A lot of control will be exercised at the state level, as Jim has informed you. There'll be an advisory board, there'll be these regulators, and eventually it will resemble the same programming such as alcohol and tobacco use.
Do we know what other villages are doing around us?
No, we don't, because the deadline is the end of the year. I'm only aware of a few municipalities right now that have chosen to opt out. Because you don't have to act till the end of the year and you're automatically opted in unless you take a formal action to adopt a local law.
I believe Ardsley has already opted out.
Are there any regulations within school zonings, considering that our downtown is so
Yes.
close to our schools?
Yes, in much the same way the dispensing of alcoholic beverages are controlled in terms of its location to churches and schools, that will be in the regulations. automatically.
Right now, already in the law, it's, I think, 500 feet from school grounds. So it's not from the building itself, it's from the edge of the school grounds. And it's 250 feet from a house of worship, again, from the edge of the property and not from the building.
So, we're looking at our smoking laws. So if we were to ban, and I'm just throwing this out, we were to ban smoking at Waterfront Park. And I don't know if you know Waterfront Park, but it's a park by the river.
It already is banned there, actually.
Already.
At the park itself?
Yes, in
Okay.
all parks
Yeah.
Okay.
and playgrounds of the village, smoking is banned. And your definition of smoking includes the word weed or plant materials. So you're already included with a smoking prohibition in your parks.
Okay, so let's say we decide to ban it in the parking lot here, okay? That's smoking, but that would not stop anyone from doing an edible of marijuana, would it, in the parking lot?
That is correct.
Okay. So, right, so people could just decide to do edibles rather than the smoking, and that would be legal.
That is correct.
Okay.
As long as the edibles have been purchased
Right.
at a retail dispensary or manufactured based upon the permissions given to you as an individual for recreational
And
purposes.
there may be rules and regs. I mean, think of like alcohol. I mean, you can't necessarily, I don't know what the law is here, but in the parking lot, open a bottle of beer and drink it. I mean, it may be that when the rules and regs come out, you can't, crack open a wrapper of, a hash brownie or something and then just leave the wrapper somewhere. Yeah, you shouldn't be allowed to do that, right? Because a kid could walk by and look at it and be attracted to it, and there may still be some THC in that thing. So there are going to be rules and regs that are going to come out that are going to give us more guidance in that. And this isn't 100% hard fact, but what I'm hearing is that there are already drafts of rules and regulations that are circulating in and around Albany, even before they populated these. The governor's people are trying to get the industry up and running as quickly as they can. And once they finish the kind of the political wrangling over who's going to get what spot, they should be in a position to at least work with something. They're not starting from scratch at that point. They're going to be working with some rules and regs to then, fine tune and then hopefully issue for public comment.
But regardless if
Just
we
one
opt
second,
in,
Donna.
I'm sorry.
I've just got a text that people can't log on because the passcode from their, not working. Is that, you getting any complaints? Anybody else? I just got,
I logged on to that laptop.
it's working?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. Whether we opt in or opt out, that's just for this dispensary and the
On-site consumption.
on-site consumption. So
And they're not
Cannabis will
they're
be
not
allowed.
together.
anywhere.
It is now.
regardless, dependent. And that has nothing to do with our smoking regulations.
That is correct.
That's correct.
It is currently legalized.
Right.
Adult recreational use is legalized with certain parameters.
And so if you opt out, I think that maybe this is where you're going. If a neighboring town is in, people in Dobbs Ferry are going to go to that neighboring town and they're going to, buy their cannabis there. And then they're going to come back to Dobbs Ferry, and that neighboring town is going to get all the tax money, and you're going to still have whatever consequences you may have, from people using cannabis. And by the way, just as an aside, that's already happening. I mean, it's just not been legal. So it's not like we're going to have necessarily increased usage. We're hopefully going to be just having legal usage and more regulated usage than what there's been, and there will be revenue that will be generated from it.
Can the village add any additional taxes or just what's set by the state law?
There's no ability to add to the taxes. The taxation will be set on the state level.
And in
Sales.
terms of taxation, do you have a sense about income generation for a typical dispensary? Is that in the, and I know it's a sort of maybe a tricky question because, a small shop is very different from a large shop, but just curious if you have any
Well,
figures for us to toss around in terms of taxation generation?
Yeah, I don't have specifics to an individual dispensary. I will say that New York, the Metro New York area is unequivocally the largest consumer market for cannabis in the world. It already is. And the governor is projecting when the industry is up and running, about $350 billion a year in revenue, tax revenue.
350
Billion.
B with the B. Billion with the B.
Million, I'm sorry. No, I think it's, oh, it is billion.
It
It is
is
billion,
billion.
yes.
With a B.
Absolutely billion, with a B.
Billion,
Yes.
okay.
So it's a big, this is a generational industry. And, there will be a lot of tax revenue that will flow to whatever.
Are
Yeah,
we
that's the numbers
required?
I've been I read the same 300 billion,
Yeah.
30,000 to 60,000 jobs. And we're talking about statewide.
Right, that's
And-
statewide, of course.
But I'd be curious about some data on what the typical,
Comparable in Massachusetts or something.
what one of those the towns of Massachusetts or Colorado, tax revenue.
I know the state has to use some of the money for certain things, but we don't have to, right? That 3% is ours to use however we would like.
That's
General-
correct.
Yes, that will be like any sales tax collected, it will go into your general fund.
Any other questions from the trustees?
However, like the state, we could choose to allocate that towards certain
Right.
issues,
Yeah, that's a
like,
good idea.
affordable housing. I don't know, so, questions that have, groups that have been historically negatively impacted by this sort of thing. So
That's interesting.
that'd be interesting for us to.
Because the state will be actually targeting the impacted populations directly with the revenues that they will be collecting under the regulatory scheme.
The social equity flows throughout the law. Social equity applicants, there's an aspirational goal of 50% of all licenses given out to be people who fall within 4 categories of social equity applicants. Those 4 categories are race, minority, gender, disabled veteran, and distressed farmer.
And this point of view is not about looking at this as a source of revenue, but as something that is already existing, that is happening, and we are just not getting benefits from it as a community and as a state.
The evidence does point to that direction, yes. There was a tremendous amount of work that went into the regulatory scheme that, it's coming forward, and the law is quite complex and very comprehensive.
Is there a set number of forms that we have to go forward with this, or can we, you know what I'm saying? Do we have to have public hearings?
No.
We will, of course, but I
the
just want to know if there's a set number.
Public hearing would be if you were to proceed to a local law to opt out on one or both. Again, they're not together. So if you would prefer just to have lounges where on-site is being consumed, or if you would prefer to have sales dispensaries only, or if you would prefer to permit them both.
People could buy it someplace else, then bring it to this one particular place. Right?
Well, they
Yeah, that's
have
possible,
these,
really.
they do have in the city a number of hookah bars and cigar lounges and that kind of thing. So, there would have to be a business model that met that. But what I'm saying is they're separate licenses. And these are the 2 of all of the myriad of licenses where you get a local say.
But we could do one and not the other, and then opt in for the other at another time. So
Yes, just by
say we
repealing the
do
law.
sales, and then later on we want on-site consumption, we can do that.
Yes, and we would have to match the permissive referendum to repeal that, whatever law that you pass.
Right.
Anybody else?
How does the on-site consumption component function, given that indoor smoking has not been permitted in New York State for a number of years?
Right. Well, I think the regulatory action will take care of what restrictions and what environmental facilities will have to be put into place. because, the legality of cigar bars in the city are subject to a lot of air filtration and depth of walls. I'm assuming, although I don't know.
But we don't have the regs yet.
Yes, because we don't have the regs. I'm assuming that the regulations will be of that kind of ilk.
Well, yeah, I mean, they virtually disappeared, the cigar bar in New York City. There were quite a number of them 15 years ago, and there are maybe a handful of private ones left remaining. So
Correct.
I'm just curious if you
Right,
have any
but
mechanism.
smoking isn't the only way you can consume cannabis.
Of course,
so,
yeah.
Yeah, so they've been,
Right.
Do we know when the regulations are coming out? Because it's hard to decide whether you're going to opt in or opt out without knowing what the parameters are.
as I said before, the rumor is, and this, don't take 100%, this is 100% fact, but the rumor is that the governor's office is already drafting proposed rules and regs so that when the Cannabis Control Board and the Cannabis Advisory Board and the Office of Cannabis Management are staffed with people, that they will have something to start looking at and reviewing and then refining and then hopefully putting out by content. I don't think the intention was, this has been at least 3 years in the making. There's been a lot, I'm sure anyone who's read about this even casually knows that this was a very hotly debated and very closely reviewed and developed law. And there is, as we've been talking about it, a lot of money at stake. And while certainly that's not the be all and end all for everyone, certainly, I think the governor has definite needs to close the budget gap, because of the pandemic and because of the way New York was kind of left out of federal aid and things like that. And so, he has every intention, I think, of working with the legislature to get an industry up and running as soon as possible. And in order to do that, you need rules and regulations. And it's not just issuing them, you have to put them out for public comment. And there's like a 45 or 60-day review period. And then people comment on them. And then people go back and they tweak them and try to do it, and they issue it a second time. So, and also understand that you can't legally grow cannabis in New York until you have a license for it. So, I mean, think about that for a second. I mean, there will be an indoor growing season and there will be an outdoor growing season. But if this doesn't get approved in January, the only growing that's going to get done is indoor growing for a while. And there's a limit to how much you're going to be able to produce. And there's a period of time from seed to actual sale down to a dispensary. And the only thing that's going to be sold initially until it gets legalized federally is, or descheduled at least, is New York grown product. So, there's going to be a at least an 8 or 9 month lag between when the licenses are actually issued. I mean, put aside when there's an application process, right? And the applications have to be generated. People have to put their applications together. Towns and villages have to be notified for dispensaries and on-site consumption lounges. And then it goes through whatever process it's going to be, which we don't know yet. And we don't know how long it's going to take. And then a license will issue. And then only then can you begin to grow, right?
And because the restriction, because it hasn't been delisted from the federal controlled substances list, as Jim mentioned, it will have to be New York product. So again, if you choose not to opt out and it proceeds, it won't be immediately going to start getting businesses coming in, because you'll have to wait for the regulatory scheme to be in place before any licenses of any kind under the law will be issued. And you'll be notified along the way of where those regulations are going in terms of regulating each and every of particular license. Right now, recreationally, an adult in a household can grow up to 6 plants, 3 youthful plants, because I don't know the vernacular.
Immature.
Immature and mature.
But as a practical matter, it's really 6 plants, because there's no distinction at this point. If you're starting from 0, right? The plants are the same, right? You can't just bring a plant in and then, on day one. So
Personal cultivation, because the legalization was immediate recreational use, each 21-year and older household member, up to a total of 10 per household, can each grow 6 for personal
I
consumption.
think there's a limit to 12 plants per household.
Oh,
Yeah,
12,
there's a cap on it. You can't, they couldn't have 60 plants in a house.
right.
In
And it's
terms-
for personal consumption.
In terms of the license, I understand that you cannot grow it or distribute it. Does that apply for all of the other licenses that you listed as delivery and nursery and labs? Is that every license is unique?
You will be able, no, the answer is not exactly. It's the answer is kind of. There are licenses that are going to be given for adult use to the registered organizations that are already in for medical. There's 10 of them right now. And they'll be able to, they're the ones that are in position actually right now to be able to start business on day one. As soon as they get a license, they're ready. They have growing facilities, they manufacture their own stuff and they dispense. So they will have their adult use licenses that they're going to be able to get. They're going to be able to add, I think, 3 additional dispensaries onto the 4 that they're already allowed for medical just to do adult use. So that's one thing. Growers, there's a limited distribution option for growers and a limited manufacturer option for growers, but they can't dispense. The only way that growers can dispense is if they get a micro business license and they can only dispense the product that they grow themselves, not product coming from somewhere else.
And that's similar to this trend of the microbreweries and the micro distilleries, where they have permission for a tastings room of their own products or products specific to New York, depending on, what particular license they have. But it would be similar to that, where you would have a grower also with a tasting room, for want of a better word, and you would be able to sample that which they have grown on site.
I know we have to wrap this up. I know, Bob, you had a question?
Yeah, a few questions. I could spend all the rest of the night.
I know.
If it wasn't the taxes, we would be talking about this.
It wasn't for
So
taxes.
why not have a red light district in the same spot? I mean, we could make a lot of taxes. It would be great, wouldn't it? I mean, the same rules that apply to 500 feet away from the school or church. I can go one county up, go hunting and shoot as long as I'm 500 feet away with a bullet.
Mhm.
What are we talking about here? These people don't care. They're worried about money.
These people are just the lawyers. They're just for us. They're on our side, Bob.
We're not advocates.
From us.
Educational.
They're all lawyers. Bob, they're all lawyers. We wanted them here. We wanted the information.
We're the village's
Okay, not a
attorney.
problem. I just spend the rest of the night here. This is ridiculous. What are you trying to do to our kids? Every time we talk about money we're gonna bring in, it always ends up not the same what they told us was gonna happen. We're gonna sell out our kids for a couple of $1,000s. Think about it, people. This is really ridiculous what's going on. I could care less what you people do in your privacy of your own home. I was a teenager starting in 1960, okay? I went through some crazy times. I had some crazy friends, okay? You're looking at probably one of a handful of people that never did drugs or went into this marijuana crap. Didn't need it.
Right.
I'm not a follower. This is stupid what we're even talking about here.
Well, we don't have a choice. We have to address this, but thank you.
We can
Anybody?
address it, but the bottom line is, don't sell our kids out for a couple of grand. I could care less what you people do on your own private time, inside your own house. Don't make no difference to me.
Okay.
You want to grow it in your house, fine. But don't sell us out for a couple of grand.
Thanks, Bob. Anybody else? Yes.
Yeah, for those old enough to remember counterpoint, an interesting, counter argument. And I respect everything he says, and I'm certainly not proposing that kids,
Just think, I don't, this is a form. I'm not even sure I need to do this, but just tell us your name and your
I'm
address.
sorry, Alan Harris, 39 Rochambeau Ave. So I was just briefly gonna say that everything he's saying, completely legitimate points, but the time and place for that was in Albany when they passed this law. And unfortunately, that boat has already left, or that train has already left. And so we're in the situation we're in. So my position is, number one, you should not opt out of dispensary. You should not opt out of consumption. Why? because it's gonna happen in Hastings anyway, it's gonna happen in Ardsley, well, not Ardsley. It's gonna happen in Elmsford, or it's gonna happen in Irvington. The point being that you're not gonna stop it by opting out. That's number one. Number two, we have an incredible opportunity because Mercy College is in Dobbs Ferry. So the Mercy College kids are either gonna go to Irvington.
But you can't be over 21, right? Is that?
You have to
Yeah.
over 21.
Over
21 or
21.
over.
Correct, but any, you know, you have to be 21 to drink. And if you look at any college campus in the United States, you know that they're going to bars and they're buying alcohol, what have you. So there are only very few revenue sources out there other than raising taxes, so I think this is a no-brainer. And then in response to, well, why don't we opt out? And then later we can always opt in, it seems like, you know, obvious. Big mistake. So from my legal practice, I know that there is big money coming into this industry in New York. It's coming from other states, it's coming from other countries. People want to open up retail, they want to open up consumption. And you don't want to miss that opportunity. There are people planning for that right now. If you opt out, those people are going to plan to build real estate. It involves licenses and applications, lots of money, lots of time. And if they spend that on Irvington or they spend it in Elmsford and you down the road decide, oh, we want to get in the game, you may very well have lost that opportunity. So that's really it for me, other than Michael Patino had a question about potential revenue. I just want to give him my card. So I'm working with a law firm in Manhattan that has represented applicants in California and Colorado and Massachusetts. So I can get you the answer to that question. What is a realistic amount? I have no idea what it is, but I know people who know the answer to that question.
10 seconds.
Bob, this isn't point counterpoint, but go ahead.
This is a bring some of my good friends here that I had many years ago. They're all dead.
Mhm. Anybody else? Is anybody from the
Yes.
cyberspace that
We
wants
have-
to speak?
Sherry Rosen Asher has her hand raised.
Okay. What happens? We will see her on the screen?
Yeah, I
Is
have
that what
to,
happens?
just give me 1 second. I have to the board. Sherry, can you hear us?
I see Ed and Rick.
I know she's gonna pop on. That's who's on Zoom right now. Sherry?
Okay, can you hear me now?
There you are.
Yes.
Okay. So I just wanted to say that I agree that, this is, the law was made already in Albany, so we're not here to debate the law, but we're here to think about the future of our village. And this is the future. And the dispensary, if we just stick to that, will bring people to Dobbs Ferry, who will also then go to the restaurants and the other stores in Dobbs Ferry. We have a lot of empty real estate. One of the busiest stores we have in town is the hookah shop. And I know that there were a lot of people that weren't thrilled when that opened, including myself. But the fact is it's outlasted a lot of other businesses. And if we start railing against, cannabis, then we might as well think about closing the bars, closing Rochambeau. There's beer for sale and Stop and Shop. So kids will get what they want to get. But this is a 21 and older thing. There will be lots of regulations. And I think that it is really not only short-sighted, but will be very detrimental to the village if we don't opt in. It doesn't mean that anything's going to change overnight. And listening to all the hoops that everyone has to jump through to get this going, it's going to take some time. So it's kind of like when you get pregnant, you're pregnant for 9 months. By the time you have the baby, you're used to the fact that you're going to have a baby. It was shocking at first. And then you can do a little research and learn about it. But I think that this is something, in my opinion, that is only has an upside for the village, and people are going to buy it. So it's whether they're going to buy it here or they're going to buy it someplace else. If you are somebody who feels that you still believe what the Nixon era was saying about this drug, then you don't have to. It's a choice, but from a business standpoint and from helping the downtown, it makes perfect sense to me.
Okay, thank you, Sharon. Does anybody else?
No, Mayor.
Okay, well, I want to, yes.
Yeah, one quick question. I came in late, so I don't know if you already discussed it. There's obviously the issue of dispensaries and all that side of it. What about people smoking in public? Is that something that's being addressed at this point? Because I'd love to have no one smoking anything in public. But I think a lot of what people are concerned about is more that kind of use other than going into a liquor store to get alcohol, going into a marijuana store to buy marijuana.
Right, so the smoking ordinance is on the agenda for later, because you're right. I mean, we have to decide, are we okay with people smoking on sidewalks or in parking lots, that kind of situation.
I've got like injuries in my back, and I flew out to Seattle where it was legal 2 years ago. And my friend took me to a place, and it was like going to a drugstore. Thanks, it is a drugstore. Got me all these different things.
Right.
Now, I don't react well to marijuana. It makes me calm and relaxed. The thing I did do though, is I put it all in my suitcase and brought it home. When I got home, my wife said, you need to get in real trouble, but I didn't. So having rules that we can follow and know what they are, I think is really important.
Yeah.
Actually, Mr. Mayor, I did travel to Denver last November, and out of curiosity, knowing that we were going to be in this position, I visited one of those places, and it is the most restricted, regulated, formal process. I was extremely impressed as the way that they operate. So it's actually a very respectful and very interesting way that they do that business.
Okay, like I said.
I just want to remind the board, you don't have to reach a decision before the end of the year. So you have opportunities to have other forums, other village hall meetings, and you can, take the meetings on the road. I mean, whatever you would like to do. Again, this isn't a formal meeting of the board, although you have a full quorum here. It isn't even necessary to have a quorum in order to engage with the public. You really should continue to get the opinions of the residents and the voters from the village, before that you proceed in one direction.
Yeah, I think we will. So I want to thank you guys for coming. I appreciate your expertise on it. We may call on you again, and you can give us more advice as more people get interested. This is one of those things where as you get closer to it, people start to realize, oh, something's happening. They start to get more interested. So thank you. Again, we're going to have at least one other meeting about this. It's a very important, serious topic. So we will move forward for it. And thank you. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Just so I'm clear, Jen, there's a different Zoom password for this meeting for the Board of Trustees. It's the same one.
Yeah, so you
Okay.
just have to open the,
I don't know why I got two texts from people saying they couldn't log in. So, okay.
there's 14 people here on Zoom.
Maybe they took the password off.
Yeah.
It's right here if you want to send it to them.
Vacation.
Okay, so is there a motion to open our regular Board of Trustee meeting for Tuesday, July 13th, 2021? Trustee Sullivan. Trustee Sullivan raised their hand. Second trustee Patino, all in favor.
How soon we forget?
How soon we forget. Can we rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge of Allegiance.
United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So our first, by the way, again, the information on how to log on from Zoom or from the phone or is in the agenda, and you should follow those directions. So our first presentation is on implicit bias, and it's on Leaders 2C, and there's someone here. Oh, I'm just, they're gonna look. do it virtually? Is that what's happening?
Yes.
So Mayor, if I can just introduce the topic. Before I arrived here in Dobbs Ferry, the managers and administrators of the Hudson River and Valley villages had been discussing about an implicit bias program for pro-diversity. They'd already had a seminar with this particular presenter. They were very happy with the results. And so we've continued to have discussions amongst the 5 communities to see if we could put together a program that would provide training for all employees of all municipalities. We thought would be a great benefit because, of course, everybody interfaces. A lot of people know each other. So we would have a pool ultimately of about 600 or 700 educated employees that would have had the same opportunity, the same experience and training. So that's sort of what we've been working on. So tonight we have the presenters here to share their program with you and take comments or questions, and then we can discuss further what your disposition is. And that is Ron Carley and his associate, Ms. Orr. So Ron, turn it over to you.
All right. Thank you so very much. Make sure I'm not muted. I am not. Mr. Mayor and members of the Board of Trustees, very happy to be with you tonight and to share with you the proposal that we've been discussing with the villages in your community. We started this work last year, and what we're trying to do is develop some shared understandings around fairness and equity. This year, I have partnered with my very long-time colleague, Cheryl Orr, who joins us tonight from Dallas, Texas. Cheryl?
Hi there, how are you all? Just want to make sure you can hear me.
We could hear you guys.
Great. I am Cheryl Orr. I can't see myself, so I'm just making sure that you all can hear. And I have had a long career in local government in the human resource field, thank you. And about 2 years ago, retired and began consulting. I have 2 affiliations. One is my own consulting firm, which is HR consulting firm. And the second is affiliation with the National Forum for Black Public Administrators. They have a consulting arm called the Institute for Excellence in Public Service. For this particular endeavor, I'm going to be working with Ron. We've worked several times now and found both that our compassion for this subject is equal. And so we are working together and doing very well. One of the things I want to let you know is that I'm currently working on my dissertation, and my subject is gender discrimination in the workplace. So my whole focus, my entire career has been on the workplace. So, Ron.
Thank you, Cheryl. As you know from my bio, I am an assistant professor at Old Dominion University, an urban public university in Norfolk, Virginia, serving a diverse student population.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but we do have your bio and we are kind of restricted. So if you could just get into the, what would you offer to us and our staff?
Certainly. The work Cheryl and I do together is targeted specifically to local governments. We understand the wide range of services provided and the environment within which you work. Cheryl?
So as you all know, this field, if you will, has evolved. It really started with the affirmative action fields of the civil rights movement and has actually evolved to EEO, which most of us are familiar with and from a whole array, and then moved into the initial was diversity. And then the next piece of this journey was inclusion. And then just recently, there's been an addition called equity that they put. So the whole thinking is around diversity, equity, inclusion, which really talks about how do we make sure that employees who are different from the mainstream employee, if you will, feel like they belong. And it's not, difference is a whole array. It can start with race, but certainly age, gender, religion, all kinds of things. We want to make sure that all those folks who come to your workplace feel like they belong. And this is, how does that happen? That's what this workshop is going to talk about.
In the workshops last summer, I asked the participants to share their values at the beginning of each workshop. On this slide, you see a word cloud created from the responses from the people from the villages last year. Our workshop is titled Leading with Values. It's based on the premise that most people want to be fair and honest. The workshop is designed to expose participants to tools and concepts that help them live by their values.
So there are 6 modules in this particular workshop. Ron and I, it's actually Ron's workshop, and I've come in and sort of absorbed them and gave him my feedback, and then we came up with this. So first one is Systems 1 and 2 Thinking, and Ron will talk about that. Let me just go back really quick. Yeah, just really quick. And implicit bias and stereotypes, racial history of the US, microaggressions and macroaggressions, personal action for inclusion, and organizational action for inclusion. This particular slide really says we're going to ask the participants, can we talk? And sort of it's the ground rules that we want our participants to work with us. We want them to listen with respect. We want them to seek first to understand. We do not expect perfection, but we assume goodwill in our workshops. We use I language rather than you language, and we use affirming language as we go through our workshop.
Our starting point is a little different than many workshops of this nature. We don't jump right in on complex issues of racism and privilege. Most people do not think that they are biased, and they do not want to be biased. Calling someone biased or racist would inevitably create defensiveness and conflict. Therefore, we start at a different place with the concept of critical thinking, using the work of Dr. Daniel Kahneman to help people understand that to be biased is to be human. If we substitute the word preference for bias, we all immediately know that there are things that we like and we don't like. These preferences emerge over time and become part of our unconscious minds. Most of our preferences are benign. They are mental shortcuts for us, and there's a range of different ones created by the brain's ability to organize, categorize, and make associations. Mental shortcuts deploy automatically and are essential for our functioning. Our unconscious mind can also lead us astray in different ways, known as cognitive fallacies or biases. And you can see some of them that have been researched on the left side of this slide. Dr. Kahneman specifically examines these fallacies in the context of people making flawed economic decisions.
So this is where we really begin to talk about what are these implicit or unconscious biases that people are talking about. And we help participants understand where those unconscious biases come from, and also talk about conscious biases and the implications of that. They come from stereotypes in terms of where people have grown up and what they've seen and heard in their homes out to their workplaces. So again, unconscious bias, this particular picture really talks about the array of folks, if you will, that are in our workplace. We are already a very diverse workplace, and anything can be, there can be an implicit bias on any one of the things, if you will, and this should have an et cetera, because there are many, many things that people can carry unconscious or implicit biases around.
To understand where we are, it's important to know where we've been. And so we very briefly take an examination of 3 eras in our history: slavery, Jim Crow segregation, and the modern era of mass incarceration. We do this looking specifically at African Americans in our country, but the same could and should be done for Native Americans, people with Latinx or Asian backgrounds, women, and the histories of different European immigrants, which are especially rich in New York. Each of these groups and others have faced government-sanctioned discrimination at different times and in different ways during our history. In the limited time in the workshop, we focus on African Americans to help inform the discussion growing out of the death of George Floyd and other cases that have raised concern about the extent of racial discrimination in our society. It's important to recognize that it's only been since the Civil Rights Act of 1964 did it become unambiguously illegal to discriminate against African Americans. In a historical context, this protection has only existed for about 15% of our history, only about 15% of our history. And thus it is no wonder that we are still working to come to grips with where we have been to create a future that takes us a place consistent with our values.
Another area in the field of DE&I is this concept called microaggressions. And so it's important to know our history. And because of our history, there have been not only individual, but collective unconscious biases that have occurred. So knowing that these unconscious biases exist enables us to control them with conscious thinking. And again, Ron's going to talk about that in particular. But what we want to make sure is people understand what these microaggressions are. And we've kind of given you some definitions, but we really do drill down in terms of how microaggressions can inhibit the belonging state that we talked about earlier in this workshop, in this presentation.
We conclude our workshop looking in two areas. First is the personal area. We give people an opportunity to look at where they are and where they want to be. We see this workshop as foundational and only one step on a journey to be the kind of people that we want to be. Participants reflect on their next steps, which includes deeper self-awareness about what creates the unique worldview that each of us has.
And it is important that we go from the individual look in terms of an action plan to the organizational action plan, if you will. So we actually help participants think about, most organizations now have values. How do you actually operationalize those values and create an organizational action plan that really helps us move forward in what we call this DE&I journey? We're going to strive to make the workshop a meaningful step in the journey towards having an effective workplace where people belong. So we
would be now.
Go ahead.
So we would now be happy to take any questions that you might have.
So I know you say there are 6 modules. How long is the whole workshop?
Yeah, it's a one-day workshop. We basically start at 8:30 in the morning, 3:30 in the afternoon.
And is it in person? Will you actually have someone here live?
Both of them.
Well, that's the exciting part this year. Last year we did virtual. This year we're proposing to be right there in your villages. I've done these workshops in both ways, and it is a significantly enhanced experience when you can do it face to face, and it's also a much better value as well.
Any other questions?
I do have a question. I hear a lot that you explain about the workplace, and as I'm the liaison to the diversity committee, and I have been exposed to a lot of information that not only involve the body of our village in terms of our staff, but we are looking to pour that diversity education upside. Will your training include education to our staff in how to actually handle things like that? Like when, for example, we receive an email of somebody complaining because something went out in Spanish. Right. Where we can educate the community that some of those behavior could be considered as racist. So those are the kind of things that me personally, as the liaison and representing the diversity committee, feel that our community needs to be educated on.
Ron, you can start and I'll also comment.
Yeah, thank you so much for that question, because that hits a very critical part of what we're trying to do. We want to create organizations where people feel a sense of inclusion and belonging. And in a public sector, a local government context, we also want people to think in terms of their interface with the public that they serve. How do we better equip ourselves to be culturally competent to deal with the diversity in our community? How do we work to create our organizations in a way that they're more reflective of the people in our community? And so that connection between the public servant and the public is critical in all of this work that we're doing. We want people to begin thinking about all of their external work, policy, services, programs, whatever they are, through an equity lens. Who benefits? Who is burdened? Are we setting a level playing field where people get what they need to succeed.
Yeah. From a workplace perspective, everything that we do in local government, and that's been my entire career, is for the citizens of the community. And so we clearly, I think our philosophy is if you can work with each other in a respectful, value-laden way, you can treat your community in that same way. So that's how we sort of start inward and then work outward.
Excellent. Thank you.
And you've done local government. Have you done local governments in the New York State?
I haven't. Ron has.
Oh. Well, last year, last summer, virtually, I did about 80 people across the 6 villages in a virtual format. I've done all 6 of the ICMA workshops in 2019, and Cheryl and I did 5 virtual ICMA workshops this past spring, which is all local government. We just completed a session for a town of Holly Springs in North Carolina. I've also done a number of other communities, including Alexandria, Virginia, New Bern, North Carolina. Local government is what we do. That is our specialty. That is the niche of what we're doing together.
That's my only customer, if you will, because I know it, I love it. I spent my entire career there. So government. Now, in terms of New York, no, but if you tell me there's something different about New Yorkers, I'll listen to you.
We talk a lot faster. Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
Mayor, we do have 2 people in attendees with their hands raised.
Oh, it's a presentation, so okay.
I'm just letting you know. Shari, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm Sherry Rosen-Asher, and I am part of the Human Rights and Diversity Committee for Dobbs Ferry. So this is DEI training is something that we put a lot of time and effort into looking at different organizations that do this. And we did put together an 8-point kind of rubric, if you will, to determine. So one of the things that I would like to ask you is, one day of training is, I also work in local government. I work for the county, and I have been part of diversity training sessions in every job I've ever had for the last 30 years. But doing one day, even if it's 8 to 6, even if it's 8 to 8, that isn't really gonna do anything, because obviously the people who are most open to it are going to walk out of there thinking, oh, this is great, and they're probably doing it anyway. And the people who are most reluctant will just be like, oh, that was a waste of a day. So I want to ask about what your follow-up is to that, what your availability is for specific questions. I mean, Mara talked about one, if we do get some questions or concerns from the public, are there opportunities for you to do things for citizens? Are there opportunities for you to try to talk to what the school district is doing and try to unite, with them and bringing in the other constituents, if you will, of the village besides just the employees of the village?
Well, what I would say is there's a start, and Ron has started with 80 across your county, a very important level to start with. We always say that's the level you start with. This would be the second level in terms of the workforce. And my sense is you do have other local people that can carry on the things, because ours is foundational. Ours is the beginning of the journey, we call it. And therefore, we would be glad to work with anybody else that you would want locally to continue the work that we have started. We are totally fine with that. We're fine coming back, but we also know that's a lot sometimes. And therefore, we would work with whoever you'd want to say, okay, this is what we delivered. This was foundational. What you can carry forward, and certainly call us to, for any assistance you would need. Ron, I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's really important to affirm what the speaker said. One day of training is not going to make all of us fully aware of what we need to do. I've been on this journey all my life, but very intensely for the last 5 years. What we seek to do in the training that we do, as Cheryl just reiterated, is to provide a foundation so that there's some common understanding. What we hope will happen is that's not the end, but that's actually the beginning. And that each of the villages can reflect upon where they are and where they want to be and how we can be helpful to them. I know one of the recommendations was that the village join the national network called GARE. And I would recommend that you give that very serious consideration. I think that's an important network. And to look at an array of different approaches that address where you are. Some communities want to do regular updated work on implicit bias training. Some want to drill down with particular subsets of their community where there are issues. Some local governments go in really with both feet. They hire chief equity officers, and they develop an equity strategic plan. It really varies based on the community, their size, and their capability, and where they want to.
So if we have
assist you in getting wherever that is.
So we have a diversity committee, and we have either all of the members or some of the members or one of the members come down and be part of this. They could sort of learn from you how to, going forward, how to react to certain things or how to respond to certain situations, correct?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
say,
We would welcome them.
Right. And it's much more, that piece is the consultation piece to help them. I mean, coming into the class, they learn what everybody else learns, and that we think that's really important. But also there's just kind of sitting down and saying, where do you want to go? Whether it's individual villages or if collectively we can make recommendations as to where you need to go next. So that's the consultation that we definitely are available for. We understand that we cannot keep coming back in, that we have to transfer the knowledge and have folks continue from there. And if we need to come back periodically, we love that, to make sure. Let me say something really quick. A lot of RFPs that are out there now are asking for the consultant not only to do the training and equity plans, but is also saying, what are you going to do to follow up to make sure that we are indeed implementing these DE&I strategies?
Right, or if we wanted to raise awareness with our residents, if we wanted to have some type of a forum or a discussion, maybe, and I'm not saying this for sure, but maybe reach out to you people to tell us, well, these are the kinds of groups that you should contact, or this is the kind of format you should have it in.
Right.
Right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah, good. That's the good work, and we would value that to continue so that your communities can continue the work. That's what's important.
Right, it's an ongoing process, and I understand what Shari said, that it's, one day you walk in, you walk out, and you feel good or not for a few hours, but it is an ongoing process that has to be, it's like a muscle that's got to be exercised, right? So thank you, we appreciate it. Anything else?
Thank you so very much. We appreciate the opportunity.
Wait, don't go anywhere.
I'm sorry. June, can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, nice meeting you, Dr. Carly, and soon to be Dr. Orr. I'm Dr. June Y. I'm one of the chairs of the Dobbs Ferry Village Human Rights and Diversity Committee, just like Sherry, who spoke earlier. And I have a few questions, and I really appreciate your presentation. In terms of the instruction that you're planning for this workshop, this one-day workshop, I have a few questions. So how are you coordinating with the current DEI training that has already been unfolding in the local school district? So that's one. Another is, how are you differentiating your instruction across individuals and agencies? So when I say agencies, I mean, like, for example, how you operationalize DEI concepts for, the DPW would be different for, different from, another agency, for example, the mayor and board of trustees, they have a different focus, and rightfully so. And another point that I wanted to ask is, how do you make that linkage between the theory and the academics, the historical aspects of your presentation, to the application, again, operationalizing. How much time do you give participants in your one-day workshop to that? Because I think a lot of people want to know those concrete steps. And the fourth point is a little bit harder, but maybe, I mean, you probably are aware of some local current community discussions in school groups about critical race theory. You know, there's a lot of, you know, thinking around that, some misconceptions, some incomplete understandings of that. And how are you going to prepare your workshop accordingly? Yeah, so those four points. Thanks.
All right, well, those are great questions. And, you know, congratulations to you and your colleague for the work you've been doing on your task force. I've looked at some of your material. And I think it's very well done. And we would want to do anything that we did across the villages. We want to be compatible with what's going on within your own village. So with regard to question number one, I've not actually seen the curriculum of the DEI work that the school board is doing. I feel confident of the materials, from the materials I have seen, there's nothing that we would be doing inconsistent with it, and would be happy if this goes forward to take a deeper look into the content of that and try to link with it as much as we possibly can. Number two was differentiation across the different services. Our training is more about personal awareness and reflection, understanding where implicit bias comes from and how it manifests itself primarily through microaggressions. Having worked in local government myself for over 40 years and at all levels within local government, I don't think there's a requirement for the work that we're doing to be differentiated. I have done the senior management of the police department. I have done every level of employee in a wastewater treatment program. And the content has been fundamentally the same. It's how do we understand ourselves and how we see the world, and how do we recognize the blind spots that we have and adjust so that we do not unintentionally or inadvertently hurt or harm other people through our words and actions. Very fundamental work. And we don't do it from an academic standpoint. We do it from hands-on exercises. The real value in our workshops comes from the peer interaction. We lay the foundation, the concepts, and then we have people who work in small groups to develop a sense of their own self-awareness and sharing with one another. And that's part of the real power that comes from the workshops. And the fourth question was
critical race theory.
Oh, I was wondering if we were going to get through tonight with critical race theory or not. So thank you. It almost in this atmosphere, it would be impossible to get away from it. So we don't teach critical race theory. In fact, I remember several months ago, I got an email from Cheryl. Ron, what do you know about this critical race theory stuff? And first time I ever mentioned it in a workshop or a class summer when I'm teaching a class on race and institutions, and I only raised it in class because my students needed to know it. And I sent them a massive report from the Heritage Foundation attacking critical race theory so that they could see both sides. And so we're really not about critical race theory. We're about critical thinking. We're about people understanding unconsciously what goes on in our brains by the very nature that we're human, and how that can result in our acting in ways inconsistent with what our intent and values are. And we want people to recognize that so that we can begin to deal with how we treat one another in decent and respectful ways on a one-on-one basis and build that out into our organizations. Cheryl, elaboration on any of those?
Just to add that we're looking for behavior. You talked about operationalizing the DE&I principles, which is what I talk about all the time. And that operationalization is a behavior change as it relates to the interaction with each other. Based on, I have a better understanding of you and I now can interact with you. And then ultimately the work that I do is better for the citizens of wherever community. So that's exactly how we kind of connect it all.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Any other questions, Jim?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you. And we'll, I guess the next step would be Richard to coordinate with the other communities. Is that?
Yes. I just want to give you a heads up on what we were working on and see if we can continue moving. and I'll coordinate with the other communities, see what they're doing, and I'll get back to you.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The opportunity. Take care.
Our next presentation is by the applicant for a proposed site plan amendment as referred by the building inspector for a property at 100 Danforth Avenue regarding the expansion of an existing terrace with related retaining wall and landscaping. Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor. Good to be here. Members of the board, Brett Schwartz from Zarin and Steinmetz, representing Lincoln Property Company, the owner and operator of the Danforth apartment buildings in Rivertown Square. This is Michael Gattaletta, the architect. He's pulling up the drawings now. I promise you we'll be quick. We're here just for an initial presentation. It's a simple site plan amendment to allow an outdoor patio space of about 1,000 square feet. We're before your board only because it's the Chauncey Square zoning district. And therefore, your board has site plan jurisdiction with referral to planning board. So all we're here to do tonight is to present the plans and ask your board to refer us to planning board for its review and comment. And then we'll come back to your board at the end of the process for final approval. And we have the drawings up.
So all you have to do is share screen. It's like you're on Zoom, but on that laptop.
Let's see. Share screen. Desktop. Got that?
Yes.
All right, great. We're just skip just the main drawing. Sure. We'll be quick.
Is there any chance you can make it the full screen?
Excellent. Yeah, there you go.
There, Zoom so. So that.
Thank you.
We'll start with it. I was picking up on the arrow right there.
I think it may be beneficial to start with some photographs, so you be familiar with the site. What we're talking about is some proposed work in the rear yard, in and around the tenant amenity of the pool area. So in the back of the Danforth, there is a small barbecue area. See some of it here. It adjoins the pool, and it's woefully inadequate. And over the events over the past year has really played this out with the tenants and management there. So we're really here to try and expand on that barbecue area. We want to have some ability to have family and seating in that area. It kind of works in conjunction with the pool, and the events over the past year has made owners and management really aware that it's severely undersized. The complex is just a little over 200 units. And the pools had to be closed. Obviously, things are just starting to open now. So what we're hoping to do is present this to the board in a favorable fashion that we can expand this small area. The plan is to actually add about 400 square feet to the current barbecue area. We're not touching the pool area. We would be extending the patio that's there. We would just move the retaining wall that currently exists. There's a small retaining wall between our level of the pool and the barbecue area and grade, right? It's a little less than 4 feet high. So we would like to add another barbecue, double it, right? So we would have 2, and then some tables and chairs, porous paving. We would use the exact same materials that currently exist there now. The retaining wall will be exactly the same. In a nutshell, the drainage flows around the pool in a swale that has been designed in the initial concept drawings. We would just continue that. So we're really not talking about much of a change, with the exception of having the ability to have a larger barbecue and seating area for guests, for our unit.
And just to orient the board, right, this is the building, it pulls off the side back here. And so on the right side, so this is the extended patio, and it pulls off to the side. Here's the lawn area, the Stonewall Parkway back in this area here.
So that's currently lawn right now, is grass, is that what it is?
That's correct.
Okay. And you're going to, very little of the space will be, the grass will be.
Yeah, I mean, just looking at the site plan and looking at the proposal, it's very modest.
Right.
It's in keeping with the building. It's discreet relative to the property. The only people looking at it are going by at 70 miles an hour. And so, I think this is a very reasonable proposal. I don't think, assuming the planning board takes no issues, I don't see any issues when you come back to us for.
I just have a question about visibility from Chauncey Park. Will there be any kind of screening, actually more for your benefit than for the people in the park?
We certainly continue. It's
Because we're
beautifully
developing that
landscaped
park, is all
now.
I'm saying, so
Yes.
there'll be more people there.
It's beautifully landscaped now, and we have every intention of continuing that landscape around. We're going to match the fence. We have our own responsibility for our tenants to keep them safe. So we have a fence, we have landscaping, the access is controlled. So yes, we certainly are going to screen that in a similar fashion to what's there now. And part of our presentation is actually a landscape plan that we will present to the board.
I see some pines in that lower right-hand corner.
Yes.
So that's something that it will be then continue to.
Yes, in
provide
that
the
lower
privacy.
right-hand corner, we're essentially going to take that retaining wall and just stretch it out a little bit. I think it's, I don't have it in front of me, it's about 25 feet further. And we will align it with the pool. So we're not going to go any beyond the pool. It'll just be more of a continuous fence. It's like a little niche missing out of that where the pool extends into the backyard and the barbecue area is actually much smaller. So we're just going to make it even, if you will.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, thank you for the presentation. I know we have this as action item number 2, but Laura Lee, I could just jump to that right now, right?
Sure, it's
So-
your prerogative.
Okay. While you guys are here, we might as well take the action on it, right? So we have a resolution where we're going to declare ourselves the lead agency and refer it to the planning board. I guess we also have to refer it to the Westchester County Planning Board, is that as well?
That would be an informational filing because the site plan disturbance level doesn't rise to waiting for comments. It's just an informational filing, which your planner can accomplish for you.
Okay, so as outlined in our proposed resolution, I'm just very quickly going to read that we've resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Dobbs Ferry as sole approval authority hereby declares that it will serve as the lead agency for the environmental review of the project. We have further resolved that a review of the environmental assessment form, the Board of Trustees determines that the proposed project will result in no significant environmental impacts, and be further resolved that the Trustees of the Village of Dobbs Ferry hereby direct that the project be referred for comment and recommendation to the Dobbs Ferry Planning Board as required by the zoning code, and for notification purposes referred to the Westchester County Planning Board. Is there a motion? Trustee Patino, second. Deputy Mayor Casano. All in favor? That passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so we're on to public hearings, and we're going to continue the public hearing on the proposed zoning code and map amendments as recommended by the planning board. Is there a motion to open the public hearing? Trustee DeRozzi, second. Trustees Sullivan, all in favor. Public hearing is hereby open. We've met on this a few times. I think we may be ready to move on this. Is that correct, Laura Lee?
Yes,
Or
actually trustee Patino and the
Mr. Nestor.
planner and Rob have worked to incorporate the changes that were discussed. And the version you have before you contains all of the revisions, including the revisions that trustee Patino suggested to the guidelines document. So you have a complete
I
revised.
also just, yeah, I'd like to say that I consulted with the chair of the AHRB and Mr. Lane, planning board, our village planner, Nestra. She made a few suggestions about incorporating some elements of the guidelines into the zoning code. And those were the elements relative to setbacks. Setbacks are defined in the tables. And she felt that it was important that if the guideline was in place, that also be part of the table and the zoning language, not just part of a guideline. So we added that, but otherwise, I think we made some other sort of minor corrections that were found, and I think we are all very satisfied with this as it is. I'd like to address Mr. Steinschneider's letter from several weeks ago. I think there were two main points. The first was about the question of bringing into compliance a greater number of properties. We felt as a group that we were sort of meeting a reasonable middle ground, that we were never going to be able to incorporate all of them. We could, and so we thought that the 40% number was about the right number. The second issue that was brought up was about the sliding scale and how that could affect properties of similar sizes but slightly different. So if you were right on the cusp of where the sliding scale changes, for example, 7,499 feet versus 7,501, you would be able to build less on that latter designated property than a former. And I think that while that is an interesting theoretical point, it seems that that's very unlikely to happen. And if it does, it could be addressed property to property. I think if you were to have less, if you were close to that 7,500 number, but slightly over, the planning board would be willing to work with the applicant to in a sensible way. So we chose not to make either of those changes, but I do appreciate your comments and I did take them into consideration and we did discuss them.
any comment?
Had any other comments from?
Should I comment?
It's a public hearing, you can.
There, Patty Steinschneider adopted the design.
Patty. I'm sorry, can you go to the mic?
Can I do what?
Can you go to the mic?
Oh, sure. I thought everybody was.
And that was just for the public educational forum. Sorry, Patty.
Not a problem. I think it actually affects a lot of the properties in the district. The average property size is over 7,500 square feet. There's a perception that there are only a couple. That actually is a significant number of them. If you take the property that I used to be working on at 156 Palisade, that property is 8,675 square feet, and it is allowed to have 26 or 20, between 25 and 2,600 square feet of site coverage with the sliding scale. Whereas if it was less than 7,500 square feet, it would be allowed 3,000 square feet of site coverage. That just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. The people who are working on it now have actually proposed that they will subdivide off the difference between 7,499 and 8,675, so they can reduce it to less than 7,500 square feet, so they can have a 3,000 square foot site coverage instead of the 2,600 or whatever it was. I gave you a concept of how you could adjust that, which we've used in a lot of different villages, which tends to work fairly well, which is you accept that 7,500 square feet as your maximum that the 40 can be applied to. And then what you do is you don't have a sliding scale. You simply say, any property that's larger than that, the property that's larger can only be 20, 22%, whatever you'd set. That way you're never penalizing a site for being bigger. You're controlling the size of the project that it could otherwise develop to be.
I took that point seriously and we discussed it. Ultimately, and I don't like to speak for other people, so I'm going to generally paraphrase, but the other parties, our village planner and some representatives from the planning board felt that it was overly complicated and overly nuanced scenario. So their advice was to maintain the current sliding scale as it relates to sort of hard numbers in 7,500.
Can you explain how the sliding scale works? Because so far, when I've asked that question, they've given a number, which comes from the single family sliding scale chart, which doesn't apply to multifamily homes. I mean, just for example, if you had a 9,500 square foot lot, what would you be permitted to have? If you had a 9,500 square foot lot, what would your square footage be?
Let's see.
Ed Manley is here. If you want him to speak on
yeah,
that.
so next one.
Let Ed, because Ed worked on this.
Okay. Bring him up.
Ed, can you hear us?
Yes. So Patty was asking what a 9,500 square foot lot would be, and it's, you take the prescribed coverage in that zone and multiply it by 0.82. And then you come up with the answer.
Anybody else from cyberspace want to comment? No? Okay, I think we've addressed this issue long enough. I think we're ready to take action on it. So is there a motion to close this public hearing? Trustee DeRozzi, second. Trustee Sullivan, all in favor? The public hearing is now closed. We do have a resolution in our packet, which I think we're ready to move on. I'm just going to quickly highlight this law, which amends the zoning code. It's an amendment to the Village of Dobbs Ferry zoning code to adopt and incorporate character guidelines on Palisade Street, clarify area and bulk tables in Appendix B, and revise the zoning map to relocate the MDR-1 boundary to include both sides of Maple Street between South Broadway and Park Road, and rezone single parcel at northwest corner of Rochambeau Avenue and Broadway from MDR-1 to B. We believe that these amendments will achieve three key objectives: will reduce pre-existing nonconformities and better align zoning requirements with existing development patterns and practice. Two, provide guidance to applicants and land use boards to improve design outcomes for future development on Palisade Street between Chestnut and Cedar Streets. And number three, clarify the area and bulk dimensional tables, which in the application have proved to be very problematic. So, I mean, we've had the opportunity to review it. Is there a motion to pass this resolution? Trustee Casal, second. Trustee Patino, all in favor? Okay, that passes unanimously. Thank you, everyone, for all the hard work that you've done. Mike, Ed, Planning Board, Worley. So thank you very much for everyone's efforts, and Patty for your input as well. So thank you. Okay, let's move on to another public hearing, which is to consider a law which will complete the process of moving the fees associated with the building permit renewals from section 127-7 to the master fee schedule. Is there a motion to open this public hearing? Deputy Mayor Casal, second. Trustee DeRozzi, all in favor? The public hearing is now open. And who can Richard, Laura Lee, somebody?
Sure. 2 meetings ago, you passed a resolution to include the fees in your master fee schedule, and this completes the process because the text of this particular section, chapter 127, includes the fees in the text itself. The other section you moved was the recreation fees, and that just references a schedule must be maintained. And now those have been incorporated in the fee schedule. Your clerk, Ms. Draper, and I have been working with the Recreation Department to get those fees. We have them. This is just the remaining effort. This really should have been caught up when we moved all the other texts and fees into the master fee schedule in chapter 175, which just points out that all the fees are now found in that schedule and they can be amended by a simple resolution and action of the board instead of a local law each and every time you want to amend them. This doesn't change the fees that are in the text. It just moves those fees now into your master fee schedule, and then you can take up the issue of whether you'd like to revise them at a later time.
Okay, great, thanks. Any questions from the trustees? Any questions from the public?
No, Mayor.
Okay. Is there a motion to close the public hearing? Trustee Sullivan, second trustee DeRozzi, all in favor? Public hearing is now closed. I think we're ready to move on this. We do have this in our packet. It's outlined as to what Laura Lee said. So is there a motion to adopt this resolution? Trustee DeRozzi, second trustee Sullivan, all in favor? Passes unanimously. Thank you. Public hearing number 3 is the public hearing to consider an introductory local law to amend chapter 112, article 3, which involves the proposed expansion of the village's smoking prohibitions. Is there a motion to open this public hearing? Trustee Patino, second. Trustee Casal, all in favor? The public hearing is now open. Maybe you could provide a little background, Laura Lee?
Certainly. You have a chapter in your code, chapter 112, which covers the use of alcoholic beverages and smoking in the village. Right now, the prohibition that exists in your chapter as to smoking is related only to parks and parklands, which are defined as parks under the control and playgrounds with general access by the public to the playground. So those are now the only 2 areas that you have smoking prohibited. I did send out in support of this a summary of other code provisions. I don't see it attached as backup, but I know you got it. What other communities are doing in terms of smoking prohibitions, there's some language there, to increase and clarify what a public park area consists of. And also I sent out the existing enforceable regulations that are already in place in accordance with your Department of Health rules and also your educational rules. I sent out those areas such as not within 40 feet of the entrance of any place of employment, no smoking in the workplace, the usual things, no smoking in restaurants and bars, the usual things that you would expect smoking prohibitions to include. Those are already enforceable because they already exist by virtue of regulation and laws. This is just the areas of local concern that you may want to address. Right now, no smoking of tobacco products and weed and any plant materials are already prohibited, but just in this narrow area. So I drafted it very broadly to see if you, wanted to take up the issue of narrowing this down or refining it further.
Or at least does the new law include vaping as well?
It does.
Yes, it says that already. Any means of igniting or any method of smoking is already incorporated. And like I said, it already includes cannabis. So that's not what this is about. What it's about is for you to look at those areas which are under the village's control, exclusive control. So
just for the benefit of the public, smoking's already prohibited in parks and playground areas.
correct.
Right. So we're faced with whether we want to expand it to other areas such as sidewalks, parking lots that are under the control of the village, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
And like I said, I broadened it
Right.
for you to look at each category and decide what you wanted to
Right, so
do.
let's have a discussion.
Yeah, I have a question when you talk about parks. There's the legal parks, and then there's areas that we use as parks, but they're not actually designated as parks, like High Street. How would we, if we want to include that, how would we do that?
Well, you can
Recreational
expand the
area?
definition of parks to include parks and recreation areas under the exclusive care and control of the village.
I think we should have a broader discussion first and then hone in on some of the specifics, because I think there's a big question which is before us. And that is, and the reason we're talking about prohibiting smoking has nothing to do with tobacco or vaping. It really has everything to do with cannabis, because the change in March, the new legislation which allows that is really what the impetus for this conversation. So, I mean, to that end, I'm going to just read a quote from Senate Majority Leader Stuart Cousins from March 28th this year. Today, New York stepped up and took transformative action to end the prohibition of adult use marijuana. The legislation is a momentous first step in addressing the racial disparities caused by the war on drugs that has plagued our state for too long. This effort was years in the making, and we have finally achieved what many thought was impossible: a bill that legalizes marijuana while standing up for social equity, enhancing education, and protecting public safety. So I think that the first issue to be addressed is some people's discomfort with that law. And I think the way that we address it is first with education, then with a discussion, and then last with legislation. I think if we're to jump directly into legislation without the conversation, without the educational component, we'd be doing ourselves a disservice. So I put together a few kind of points, and I'm willing to keep looking at this, and I'm willing to hear other points of view as well. But there is some question about secondhand smoke outdoors. We all know what the effects are indoors. And so how does that affect outdoors? And there's, some people dismiss it as just, you're in the open air, it doesn't affect you, but that's not exactly how it works. There are studies about outdoor smoking, and they all show that close proximity, for example, if you're sitting at a cafe table and the person sitting at the table next to you is 2 feet away and they're smoking a cigarette or marijuana or cigar, that you will have harmful negative effects of secondhand smoke, the same you would as you were indoors. Once you get to the 6 foot mark, the impact drops off precipitously. Once you get past 10 or 12 feet, it's almost non-existent. It sort of tends to end up in the same classification as sort of generalized pollution. And so, I think that given those things, we should be thinking about proximity and activity as a function of how we craft the law. And what I mean by that is that in places where you cannot separate by 10 feet, there should be no smoking allowed, whether that's cigarettes or marijuana or e-cigarettes, it doesn't really matter. I think the evidence is clear that it can be harmful, particularly as it relates to developing lungs. So that meaning children or anyone with asthma, who have sort of extremely harmful effects. So what does that mean? I think that there's no question about playgrounds. I think we should strengthen and enforce the question of playgrounds. There's no question about schools. There's no question about bleachers. There's no question about sporting events. I think we can include all of those things. We can include some kind of buffer zone around them so that if you do want to watch the football game at Gould Park, you can't smoke in the bleachers, but you can walk out onto the sidewalk and you can have a cigarette or whatever it is you want. So I think I think we should be using the science. We should be thinking about it that way. And I don't think we should be putting this in, sort of broad questions about whether or not people should be using marijuana. We're past that. state legislation. And I don't think that our board should be attempting to subvert what the state legislature has worked hard to pass. I think that, there's a few scenarios that we can envision regarding the enforcement of a broader spectrum ban on smoking. Let's say we were to include streets, sidewalks, parking lots, trails, everything that was included in the original drafted local law. You look at a scenario where the police are being asked to approach a couple of young guys who are smoking on the sidewalk, and they don't want to comply. They don't want to show their identification. And, we go from a scenario that's relatively harmless, someone smoking on the street, to a potential, unnecessary escalation of what is essentially recreational and legal activity. And so that to me seems like a litmus test for, whether something makes sense or not. If you think of it a different way, if you allow in some places but not in others, you allow both the police department and you allow, residents or visitors to the village to have options. So yeah, you can smoke near the playground, but you can take it down the street. You can take it to the sidewalk. You can take it somewhere else. So I think there's a certain sort of sensibility that we should be considering. I don't think we should be looking at a blanket ban on all public property, because really it's kind of silly at this point. But I think we should be looking at strengthening the areas where it matters.
With that said, Lori, what would that mean for our restaurants and bars that actually, their patrons actually smoke outside of those establishments?
Well, as it stands now, I sent out a list of the existing regulations. I can't access it right now because I can't get to my desktop, but I did send out a list of the places that it's already prohibited. And that includes within 40 feet of the entrance of any place of employment. So if they were to step out of the bar, the current regulations require them to move 40 feet away. So, that already exists and could be enforced should you choose to enforce it. It is illegal to smoke in restaurants and bars. So even your sidewalk cafes, they're not smoking areas of restaurants and bars. So that already exists by virtue of regulations already on the books.
Those are state regulations. Those aren't local regulations.
They are state regulations and they're based on the Clean Air Act, which is a federal regulation. Yeah. So you have the ability to enforce those regulations as they exist today. This was just an opportunity for you to start dialogue to determine if you wanted to expand the prohibition to other areas of the village in the control of the village. So already, for example, it's banned under the education law. It's already banned on school grounds. It's already banned within a certain distance of the recreation fields owned and operated by the school. All of that stuff is in place already.
What about like public places of worship, like churches and stuff like that? Is that already banned there?
Yes.
Okay.
If it's banned within 40 feet of an establishment, that pretty much covers a lot of the sidewalks.
Yes, it does.
Already.
Which I don't see.
I don't see that. Am I missing it? We're talking about public health law, Article 13E.
Well, there's a series of the, I apologize. There's a series of them. And I think the county's regulations say it's banned within 40 feet of the entrance to a place of employment. And I think you often see the placard outside of business offices, office buildings, public places that says no smoking within 40 feet of this entrance. And it's in furtherance of that regulation.
I run in a smoke-free facility and they're not allowed to smoke within 15 feet of the entrance of my hotel. And it's a never-ending battle because nobody really listens. So it's a very hard thing to actually reinforce.
Yeah.
Yes, I think that in the parks, that would be more enforceable. First of all, it's already existing. People aren't smoking in the parks as it is, and it's an area that's very defined. Parking lots possibly, but village-owned parking lots, I don't think should be private parking lots. I don't think should apply to that. Sidewalks, I think, is a whole nother issue. I mean, I don't have an issue so much with the cannabis smoke as I do with the tobacco smoke, but that's a whole nother thing.
You have no authority to ban it on private property. This
Right.
is really just
Yeah,
in public parking lots.
I mean,
adjacent to
I do
parks.
think banning it on sidewalks is kind of pushing it. As much as, like Patty said earlier, I'd rather not smell anything, but there are people who do enjoy it. It is part of their recreation. And why I might not like it, we also have to think about the village residents who do enjoy it. And, you know, if we're going to restrict it, how much are we going to restrict it?
And I take frequent walks in this village, especially here in the downtown, and I don't see that as a current problem for us. I don't think it's abused. I don't think it's so frequently done. So I kind of agree that I'm more concerned about the harm that it can cause to the businesses. If somebody passes by real quick, it's a quick walk by.
So you're concerned if someone comes out of a restaurant or a bar and they are prohibited from smoking, but they already are according to law within 40 feet, right?
That's county regulation. I apologize. I just opened this up. Thank you. It isn't included here, but that's a Westchester County regulation.
Yeah, because I had a question about something like that too, like if you have outdoor cafes, you're not allowed to smoke while you're sitting at the outdoor cafe, but if somebody's standing next to somebody who is sitting at an outdoor cafe and they're in the middle of the street, that's pretty offensive. But I don't know how you regulate that either.
Is the chief present?
Yes.
Could we have him give us his opinion?
Yes.
How's everybody doing tonight?
Chief, good.
Regardless of my personal feelings regarding marijuana use, as Trustee Patino had mentioned, and one of the other speakers, the train has left the station. So certainly attempting to regulate outdoor use in public spaces, not like parks, but sidewalks, potentially does cause some enforcement issues for us, insofar as if it is legally possessed because of Albany, then what are we enforcing? Is it's a civil code or a civil penalty? So then I guess my question would be, do we want the police department involved in civil fines? What if we turn up something out of that stop that is more serious? Are we potentially looking at fruit from the poison tree that technically we may not have had authorization to conduct that investigation? Just some things that we should discuss. And we don't have probable cause just simply smelling marijuana now. We have to utilize other, especially if an operator is in a vehicle, we have to use other investigative methods to determine intoxication. But odor is no longer a reason for furthering that investigation. So I mean, that kind of would apply on a street level stop as well, that if we're interacting with the public because someone is called that they feel that group of subjects are smoking in public, and they hide the cigarette, we really can't do anything more than that. And like I said, I think we really should kind of explore this a little bit further. There's still some, I think, gray areas in regards to this, and I think we have some time to discuss this further.
Okay. Is there anybody else from the public who'd like to speak, whether in here or out there? Nobody? Okay. I do think the streets and the sidewalks will be very difficult and, but the parking lot out here is always, you and I spoke about it also, the parking lot, I don't know.
I also think easements and right of ways are like what the public doesn't even know what that
Right,
means.
so,
Yeah.
right. So. Okay, so I think we should just put this over to the next, we'll think about it and we'll move on it, I hope, at the next meeting. The aqueduct, the Old Croton Aqueduct, that's state property, right?
That's
So we
state.
have no say over that. So people can just do that regardless.
The state doesn't allow smoking in its parks. So
That's
no state
correct.
park is
Right.
permitted smoking. So, we're really, and as we've seen, there's in the downtown, at least, there's virtually no place where you can smoke on the sidewalk.
Right.
So that leaves the majority of the rest of the village sidewalks and streets. And really, when you think about the science, it's about close proximity, right? And so we should, if there were a real public health related issue behind this, we should be considering that, but there isn't. And so really what we're getting into, and this is my point in the beginning, is our collective discomfort with the cannabis law.
Right.
And it really has everything to do with that, and it has nothing to do with the science, and it has nothing to do with cigarette smoke, and because it's fairly regulated already by the state, by the county, and by the village. So let's talk about that. Let's educate ourselves about that, and I think that's what leads to simplifying this rather than making it more complicated than it already is, as we see.
I do like the rewording of the opening, the way you put about health. I think is better than what we have now.
I also think it's good to expand it a little bit to the athletic fields and bleachers. Like that wasn't really part of the original law, it was just parks and playgrounds, I think.
Yeah, those are important because
Yeah.
of the proximity question,
Yeah.
which is what the science tells us. You're 3 or 4 feet away from someone,
Yeah.
secondhand smoke is negatively impacting
Yeah.
you. And there tends to be greater, concentration of kids at places like that. And I think even forgetting the public health issue, just are adults setting a good example around kids? I mean, the, separate question, which we're not really in the business of legislating, but just as a resident, as a citizen, we shouldn't be encouraging kids to smoke anything. And so doing that at, baseball
Right.
games or whatever, those things should be elsewhere.
So do I need a motion to continue this to the next meeting?
Yes, I would. Yep.
When is the next meeting?
August 10th.
So is there a motion to adjourn this public hearing?
How does it work though? Like if we adjourn it to the public hearing next meeting, but it's the same language here, can we pass it or can we modify it during the meeting?
Sure, you can modify it. You can, first of all, make sure there's no member of the public that is attending today that wanted to make a comment. And then you can certainly take a stab at modifying it and put it back on for public hearing in a modified form. And, we can take it from there. I can take a look at it with the language suggested having to do with health effects. And I can present you a red line copy of a revised law if that's the general consensus.
I want to review what you send us from other communities.
But if we modify it at the next meeting, then you have to put it over till the September meeting to
No.
approve it?
No,
Okay.
you can adopt it right up to the, last minute. You can keep revising it. You're not changing it wholesale. You can choose not to act on it at all and just leave it as it stands now with prohibiting public park locations. And it's well within your purview to do that.
Since it's been referenced more than once in this discussion, the adjacent communities, which we looked at, I don't know, maybe 7 or 8 adjacent communities and what their local laws were. And aside from Ossining, all of the other villages and towns did not include streets and sidewalks. They were limited to parks, ball fields, playgrounds, things like that. So I think just, the big picture is that.
If I may just clarify that, all the other communities don't have a separate chapter for alcohol and tobacco. All of the other provisions quoted, except for the Village of Ossining, those provisions are in their parks and recreation chapters. So it's a little different here because you have a separate chapter. So you have the ability to entertain the minutia, where the other organizations would need to separate their no smoking prohibitions into in some cases, there's a public health and nuisance chapter, and some, I just did a broad search for just the general local area to see, but everyone except the Village of Ossining includes the smoking prohibitions in their parks and recreation chapters directly. And you don't have that.
How does that affect the way I think about this, or the way anyone should think about this?
It affects it because it's not an apples to apples comparison. It's not as simple as an apples to apples comparison. And also, because it's separated out, you have the ability to find any nuances to talk about the health effects for a broader area of the village. That's all. So as you're suggesting.
So because those are in the Parks and Recreation section, they're not addressing all public property because they cannot there.
Right.
So I suppose we should look at those communities again and see if there is other language elsewhere in there.
There is.
There is not.
No,
So we have to assume that that is intentional. They have chosen not to implement.
I don't know if you can assume that. But you have the ability to nuance it like you're suggesting, to talk about health effects and to talk about proximity and to talk about science. And you can apply that to other areas of the village if you so choose.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, I was also concerned with what Nicole said, that we can change the law. We can have a public hearing right there and then change the law and then vote on it that day.
Well, you've had a public hearing tonight suggesting changes, which I will make for you and get you another draft. You can further refine and revise that based upon a continued discussion, input from the public and such, as you see fit. So yes, you can continue to refine it. That's the purpose of the public hearing and getting the comments from your fellow board members now. There's direction and focus, and I'll certainly be able to provide that level of nuance because you have a separate chapter and we can address the nuance as you would like to, and you can revise it right up to the moment it's adopted.
And we can also take comments in writing from the public too,
Yes.
between now and the next meeting. People, anybody who's interested can write to us with their comments.
Correct.
Right, good
Yes.
point.
And you're, again, just to be clear, your code already prohibits partaking of cannabis, but only in parks and playgrounds with public access to them. That's right now. We're not changing this to include cannabis in any form whatsoever. You already had that because your definition includes weed and other plant materials. So.
Right, but I do like the fact that we spelled it out: athletic fields, spectator areas, bleachers, picnic areas. So, the rest of we can, it doesn't seem like we're going to go forward with the streets, sidewalks, easements, rights of way. So.
Yeah, I can certainly.
Walkways and trails.
Yeah, well, I'll send a red line out. I can put in the intent, the legislative intent section, the specifics that Trustee Patino can actually send me, the specifics if he desires to, the specifics as to proximity, the specifics as to the intent to protect underage or tender age from the effects of the secondhand smoking, the health effects, whatever you want to do. But I certainly will, when you get a red line back, we'll have removed rights of way, easements, streets, sidewalks, that kind of thing.
Are we okay with that? Maura, you okay with that? Nicole?
I am.
Except as otherwise covered by the Clean Air Act and.
Right.
What village walkways are there even? Are there any?
Well, you suggested there were some parks that maybe you need to include that aren't dedicated parkland, but we can refine the definition so it
Recreation areas or something like
Like
that.
during The new park that
Chauncey
we, the
Park,
Chauncey
yeah.
Park Trail, there's,
Yeah.
there's some disparate things around the village. I think, High Street, if it gets renovated,
Yeah,
right now,
'cause
no
that's
one
not
doesn't really know where to go,
communicated.
but in High Street, except in the bushes. So, where it's probably happening anyway. So, yeah, I think there's a fair amount of other areas, and I didn't want, I think we should just look at them, each one. That's the point.
Okay, so is there a motion to adjourn this public hearing to our next Board of Trustee meeting on August 10th, 2021? Trustee Sullivan, second trustee Garazi, all in favor? Okay, so that's adjourned. Appointments. Mayor Rosillo to announce the following appointments to the Ad Hoc Affordable Housing Task Force for a term of 1 year. Rebecca Pitts, Robin Larkin, Elizabeth Mendez, and Lorraine Campanelli. So Donna, anything you'd like to add to this?
Yeah, no, these are really four terrific people. They're all community advocates. I think a lot of us know these people already. Rebecca Pitts has done a lot in transportation and traffic safety issues. She was also on the library board. Robin Larkin has extensive experience in working on public housing and affordable housing. She's the former head of Community Immigrant Services. She's now the executive director of Spring Community Partners. Elizabeth Mendez works at Children's Village. She's on a Dobbs Ferry Diversity Committee. Lorraine Campbell is also very active. She is now the director of Community Immigrant Services, and she serves on the board of Spring Community Partners. So they're really terrific, active, involved people who have a passion about this. So I'm excited to have them.
Okay, great. So welcome, and we want to thank them for their volunteering to join this committee, which Donna has really gotten moving. Huh, Donna?
Beyond moving.
So thank you, everyone, and we look forward to doing some substantive work. So thank you. Next, we move to courtesy of the floor. Is there anyone live or online that would like to speak?
Nobody here with their hand raised.
Okay. So Nicole, being the nice person that she is, suggested that we move up item number 3 regarding Hudson Social to number 1, because you guys have been so patient. So
We're just waiting for the appetizers to pass.
Yeah. Don't we need some demonstration products?
I don't want demonstration on that topic.
No,
that
this
we
is about
discussed.
garbage, but yeah.
Good evening, Mayor, village trustees.
good afternoon.
Matt Kay, Ron DeRusso, Hudson Social. Should be some music.
Ron, I don't know if you were here in the beginning, but you just have to share your screen like you would on Zoom.
You want to do it now? We've been here for 2 hours, so if there's a bathroom break that people want to take, we can do the bathroom break.
And then share, and then you could pull up the, yeah.
Thank you.
No problem.
Okay, you introduced us? Yeah. Okay, good. So at the request of DPW, we are asking for the village's permission to adjust our site plan to allow for fenced-in area for dumpsters for refuse, for all refuse. We will purchase two-yard dumpsters that will be able to, that will have the hinges on them for the DPW to be able to pull them directly into the trucks. Additionally, right now, our refuse is right against the train station. So it's against the train platform. So it's unsanitary. It doesn't smell good in the summer. And we'd like to move it away from that area. We also want to move our recycling and all our recycling to that same area so that it's all sort of away from commuters and from our customers as well. This is a picture of what, there are a few pictures of what things look like now. Give you a sense, it's all piled in the back against the train platform because that's the only space we have.
And this is on a good day. Believe it or not. Yeah.
Or bad.
So what we're proposing is this is the survey of the waterfront lot. Sorry, Trustee Social is down at the bottom. You can see it right there someplace. And we're proposing to go over here, and I have a more in-depth picture to the last two spots of the parking lot, the southernmost spots of the parking lot, and to take those two spots and utilize them with a fenced-in area for a dumpster, which I'm showing right here. So this is, again, this is Hudson Social. This cursor's not great. And the yellow area is where the two spots are that we're thinking about. And this would put it away from the platform, away from the restaurant as well. We would lose 2 parking spots, but we think it's in all of our better interests to do this.
And it will be properly covered and fenced.
It will have a stockade fence around it.
Can you make it any prettier than that since it's the entrance to the park? Little mural, little paintings.
We could try something. Yes. Picture of Brussels sprouts. These are the 2 parking spots we're talking about right here. Yeah.
How's that going to impact traffic? I mean, if you're pulling in the DPW truck and people are pulling in to commute, is it going to be a stop or is there room to come
There are
out?
not cars there in our spaces in the morning.
So they would be able to pull up into our spaces
Right.
if there would be, to prevent the traffic.
Although we are requesting to set back a bit, possibly the sidewalk that you see next to these 2 spots is really a sidewalk to nowhere. It ends, and you can, I have another picture which shows it a little bit better. Yeah, right here. So this space we're talking about, and the sidewalk you can see here really just ends and goes nowhere. So what we would actually prefer is that we set back the fenced-in area closer to this sign. Over the sidewalk.
What are you talking about, disrupting shrubs and bushes and
No.
trees? Okay.
No, not at all. It would be on the sidewalk area, not extending onto the grass. And that would give a bit more room for the sanitation trucks to pull up. One concern I have, and you can see, is that the entrance to the station lot is right here.
Yeah.
That's my concern.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. So ideally the trucks would pull in front of on the side of the spaces when there's no one, when they're empty, and they generally are in the morning. But it is a concern, and that's why I'm going to try to set it back as far as possible.
Even now, because I'm witnessing every morning when they come, there's still, if there were cars coming, they're going to still, where they're picking up our garbage now across the street, which is an absolute mess to begin with. They're still can't really get around the truck anyway, because there's 2.
They're blocking.
They're blocking it. I mean, there's 2 guys on the side. They're dumping everything in. It might be a car or 2 that's maybe waiting. If that, they're out of there pretty quick. But at the end of the day, it's an absolute mess what it is right now. I mean, if they don't get there to us by 11:30 in the morning, if they get there to us sometimes by 12:30, you know, I have customers complaining that that's what they're looking at and that's what they're smelling.
What time of the day do they usually get?
They're
there?
usually there fairly early. Once in a while, it might be because they're doing recycling first and they're coming back to get garbage. But usually
This is what our garbage looks like now.
Yeah.
yeah, that's what it looks like now.
So one little observation that I have, just considering, if you go back to the previous picture that you have, you notice the single tree that it is from the view of the train station into the two spaces, and the 2 or 3 bushes that are on the side, which is then the main entrance of the park. If we could enhance the blocking of whatever you're building with some type of trees, it will kind of alleviate the view from the train station into the lot, as well as the entrance of the park. Just because we know that on a busy weekend, there's going to be a lot of garbage, and what you have currently in the back could happen internally inside that container. And the view from the higher platform could be that people can actually
I
see
think
it.
the height we did with the fence is
It's going to be a 6 foot high.
6 foot high. So you're,
Just keep that in mind when you
course,
guys,
yeah.
of
And-
course, keep it in your mind when you can develop the whole project.
And each of the dumpsters, I think each dumpster is about 8 55-gallon cans. So, you know, there a lot, you can take a lot of refuse in those dumpsters.
Is this something that has to go to the AHRB?
I think, I mean, the fence, no, excuse
Wait,
me.
wait, Bob, wait. Bob, this is, we'll let you speak, but go ahead, Mike.
Do you need them to get the trucks in there? Well, they would pull the trucks.
You need those?
Yes, yes.
Why can't you just restrict those parking spaces for above levels?
There are spaces.
No parking, instead of closing them off.
Because you gotta put the cans there, that's why, right?
Just ask them, what?
No, I'm saying you gotta put the cans there, keep the cans there, I think.
The parking spaces are not for the cans.
Yeah, they are. It's
They are.
dumpsters.
Those parking spaces
Yes.
belong to Hudson Social. They're not open to the village.
Dump the cans.
No.
No,
Okay.
it would be for the dumpsters.
Sorry.
So let's go back to the HRB. I don't know, Mike, what you think?
Fences go to the HRB. I think this is a pretty, there's no question that this is a benefit for everyone. Right? It's great for them. It's great for us. It's great for everyone who gets on the train. So there's no question that should happen. I think it seems to me like you have, like I was on the AHRB. This is the kind of fence I would have asked you to do. You're already doing it.
That's what we're talking about.
You know, I prefer the simpler one on the left, but honestly, it's a wood fence and it's completely closed, so you can't see between, you know, boards. It's tall enough so that it's, you know, unless the basketball team, professional basketball team is here, no one's going to look into it. You've got two yard containers. They have tops on them. They're not unsightly. I think, you know, just it's a kind of a.
Well, it's village property.
I know
so
this
don't
was
think
a-
It has to go to the AHRB.
Wait, I know this is a discussion item, so what's the next step? Do
I think, I think it's really, what this is they're requesting an amendment to the
Right, to a
licensed
lease.
area.
Yeah.
Yeah, that they lease the property, but because these are public, this is public parking, these are part of the licensed area. And they're asking for an amendment to this overall site layout, which is part of the lease. And they would need to apply for and obtain a building permit, at which point the building inspector would send it to the HRB because it is a building permit. And, you know,
Even if it's on village property?
I
I'm
believe-
just technically.
I believe so. And I think the fence exceeds the maximum. So, you know, I think 4 feet without.
It does.
So,
The
yeah.
fence code is not written that way,
Yeah,
and
it's
for it doesn't address anything like this. And so I think it's an exception could and should be made for the height in this instance.
So in terms of our work right now,
Yes, if you're in favor of this amendment, then you can pass a resolution calling for amendment of the site layout plan, which is part of their lease and licensed
which you will
space.
draft.
we can address that with, and with Ed's help, they can obtain the application documents and make their application to the building department to enclose this space and to proceed to, determine. Certainly, it would need to be visually attractive because of its location, so.
That's right. So tonight, all we're going to do is pass a resolution agreeing to an amendment to the lease, subject to you and the building inspector's approval. correct?
Well, it would be, yes, it would be,
Language.
yes, it would be your approval to make this amendment and this revision to the site layout plan.
Now, and since we have to amend the agreement, I believe in the agreement, aren't the number of spaces listed in there? Because I know when we initially did this, we
12
gave
spaces.
12 spaces. So you would be revoking your right to 12 spaces, you'd be canvassing of the 12 spaces, or do you need 2 other spaces?
No, we would be revoking the right to 2 spaces, so we would only have 10 spaces.
Let me just throw something out there. Could you take the 4.5 feet of the sidewalk and put the 2-yard dumpsters front to back and then only take 1 space? Is that possible? Like, I guess it's ultimately a question. I look at this all the time with loading docks, that related things. You need the truck operator to sort of sign off on it, if they can get in, pick up if they can get their piece in, but you may be able with 1 space and the 4.5 feet of the sidewalk, build a fence and then lose 1 spot instead of 2. I don't know if it.
Right, 2 reasons we didn't go that way.
Okay.
One is we wanted to leave enough room for a car in the 3rd space to be able to open its door, so there wouldn't be a fence right there. Secondly, we want to include all of our recycling.
Got it. So, all right, I just
Yeah.
brainstorming.
Trying to help you
Yeah.
out.
Okay, give me one more.
We started with garbage, then we were like, what are we doing with the other side of the restaurant now
Yeah,
too?
you
So
got
it's-
grease, you got the recycling. you got-
Yeah.
All right.
So this isn't, it's not on our agenda, so am I gonna add this as an action item, Laura Lee, as a resolution?
Sure.
All right, so we're gonna add this as an action item. I'm gonna move it to, I guess, number 2, because we've already done 1. So is there a motion to grant the request to amend the lease and site layout at 11 Station Plaza, subject to the building inspector and the language implemented by the village attorney?
I don't think it should go like even for a soft recommendation from the.
Right, but when I do that
mayor in
now?
terms of fee.
I think we should include that because historically speaking, it doesn't happen.
Okay,
Right,
so
exactly.
and with a referral to the AHRB. Okay, is there a motion? Trustee Patino?
Yeah, I think, in support of this, in addition to that, that we are in support of the
We
6 foot.
support the 6 foot
Yeah.
fence, okay. Okay. Trustee Patino, second trustee Casal, all in favor? Passes unanimously.
So.
Now you have 2 points after we voted on it.
We can rescind it,
Is that correct? The only other request, and I didn't think about it before, is to purchase the 2 dumpsters up front. I don't think that affects anything. We can leave them, we can leave them in our space behind and just replace a lot of the cans that we have. And we'll just keep it back there until we're able to fence it.
So you're saying you're going to buy them up front?
Yeah, we'll just buy them now as opposed to waiting until everything's approved. I just don't want to jump ahead.
I mean, that's up to
Yeah,
you guys.
it's up
It's a
to you.
business
That's up to us,
decision, but
right? I just wanted-
we're not
yeah.
approving it outright, right? It has a couple more steps, so.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Liz, I know I made that complicated. Did you get all that, you think? That should have been added on as an agenda item. Okay, thank you, guys. Let's do the discussion of Ferry Festa.
Yes.
I know that we have Patty here, so.
Just in case you have any questions.
So we had,
We have a date?
we had a proposed date, didn't we? Anybody? Richard, Alyssa, did we have a proposed date, I think?
Proposed
I
date.
mean, we had canvassed, I spoke to the clerk because I wasn't here. I wasn't here previously, and so I think the clerk was canvassing the available dates, September, October. And then I was told it was generally held the 2nd week of October.
Is that true?
October, first Saturday of October.
First Saturday?
I know trustee Nell had requested Sunday. Do we need to discuss that?
Yeah, let's
Or is that-
discuss that. So I think trustee Nels suggested a Sunday because she thought it'd be less disruptive to the businesses, downtown businesses.
How does that work?
We've never done it on a Sunday, right?
I think the biggest difference is the cost of overtime.
I've been involved in a couple of them.
Yeah.
Since the first. I've given, Lisa, I didn't give that to you in punishment. That I gave her a brief history and information on it, which you probably all want to see before you've set things up. It is long, but it covers everything. And it addresses things like why we don't do it on, why we weren't doing it on Sunday. A lot of the stores and businesses are small operations. When you do it on Sunday, it means that they have to come in. When we went and spoke with business owners and said, what would you think of on Sunday? The restaurants were very favorable because they figured they don't do as much business on a Sunday as they do on a Saturday, so it would give them support and more sales of food. But none of the other businesses were thinking that it made sense for them to have to come in on the one day of the week when they're off to try and do a festa.
But I would think some of the businesses would do most of their business on Saturday, and when they feel we close off the street and people can't get access to their business, it hurts them.
Well, most of the businesses are doing a month's worth of business in that one day.
I know that the hair salons and the nail salons complain about it because it
They
closes
do.
off all the parking and all that. And there are a good number of businesses on Cedar and Main.
They complain about it. I mean, 2 years ago, just as a kind of like how this usually works. 2 years ago, I was getting a lot of complaints from one business who were complaining that we allow food trucks. And they thought that was really unfair because they pay taxes as a brick and mortar. And that year they happened to sell out by 4 o'clock. So had they not had food trucks, there wouldn't have been food from anywhere. So I don't think they were suffering from it. But the general concept of these things is people will complain a lot. So what I did that year is I said, listen, I'm tired of this. I don't want to be doing this anymore. Why don't we just not have the Fairy Festa? They immediately pivoted and said, are you kidding me? We do 1/12 of our business a year on that day.
The
So-
restaurant said that too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not talking about that. We're not talking, the restaurants would still benefit from it being held on a Sunday or a Saturday. So
Right.
that's not answering the question.
Well, hair salons, and I mean, they've got a full half a day without any real hassle. And there's no restriction of people being able to do it other than not being able to park in front of the store. The businesses are still open.
Right, but they complain that people can't park there, they're gonna lose the business.
Yeah, but that's not necessarily true. I mean, it goes back to the same thing about 99 Cedar parking. Like I have been into towns where there is festivals and things going on, especially now that villages and towns have closed streets to open outdoor dining. And I have to park far away and walk. It's like Donna has always said, this village has a walking problem, not a parking problem.
She stole that from me.
I stole that from you.
That's one of my.
I admit that.
I don't know if I'm gonna do my nails, I'm gonna do my nails anyway.
I'm just saying, like, I'm not hearing why we're adverse. I mean,
Well-
my reason, if overtime's more money, is a good reason.
I
Why
would ask-
Saturday is a better day than Sunday, but I'm not hearing a legitimate reason why Saturday is preferred, and
I
there's
think
less like rowdiness. This was Christie's point, I think, in her email, that on a Saturday, people are more inclined to drink more and stay around more, and you can look at me like that, but people are more likely to
I'm
drink
not- I
a
don't-
lot more on Saturday than they would be on a Sunday.
Vendors might be a problem. People go to church on Sunday. I think that it might decline the attendance and participation doing it on a Sunday.
I mean,
That's a pretty good story this year.
you have some time to talk to some of the vendors about it. I mean, I would ask some of the hair salons, would they be happier if it was happening on a Sunday? You might get the same response that I got from that other business, where they would say, well, no, because then we're going to lose all the people who come and they find out about us, and we do
Sure, I'm not saying
face
that.
painting out in front and we get a lot of business. It doesn't mean, the one of the hair people who complained, that was actually 4 or 5 years ago. they had told us that they had a bridesmaids thing, and we actually arranged for parking. And we accommodated them 100%. It all turned out to be a little bit of a invention of a problem. And that didn't stop that person from complaining profusely the next day on Facebook. And people stepped up and said, "You've got to be kidding me."
There's another question, not to dismiss the needs of the businesses, but I think we should weigh those, but also this is more about everyone in Dobbs Ferry. It's more about residents having a day to enjoy downtown, see each other, see their, so, and bring other people in. And it seems to me that Saturdays are more conducive to that sort of thing than a Sunday, because people tend to use Sundays. I mean, nowadays, family days, people go to church, people get ready for the school, work week and things like that. So, from that perspective, I find Saturday to be slightly more favorable, but I'm also open to hearing, if we heard from all the businesses and they all said the same thing, Sunday's the day, then I would reconsider that.
Of course.
It doesn't seem that, it seems like there's argument.
How are the parklets going to affect?
I was about to
this?
ask that, yeah.
Well, I'm assuming that the restaurants that have parklets would be using their parklets for the
But they
festival.
will be paying the fee to the Ferry Festa that they usually pay.
Well, and you're gonna need to read this 20-page thing. You're just gonna have to bite down and do it, because it goes into all that kind of stuff. This, one of the big questions is this a village event in terms of the incorporated village of Dobbs Ferry, or is this a community event? We've always treated this more as a block party.
Right.
And what that means is we have to get permission from everybody in the village. People have talked about having the chief and the DPW on the committee. To me, putting them on the committee says we all have equal voices. I don't think my voice is equal to Rick's. I don't think my voice is equal to Steve's or Jen's. They are the ones who know how to get this stuff done. We have to go to them with hat in hand saying, would it be okay if we did this? So I think having them be much more powerful than another member of the committee is better. We've worked really well with all of them in all the previous years. I think, Jen, I think you'd feel comfortable that you guys get to tell us exactly what we have to do, and that's the way it is. And Chief Rick, he's been phenomenal. He understands how to make this safe for the community. And that's what I really thought you were going to be talking about more tonight. Is this too soon?
That was my next point.
Right,
Because
that was- you have to get
if we
to that,
allow
right.
this, then, the big events at Waterfront Park are going to be back, and, it's a new world post-COVID. And, do we want that? We've already had a request for, over 1,000 people at Waterfront Park that we kind of held off because it was probably in March or April when we weren't really sure where the vaccine and everything was going. And we're obviously at a different time now. So that definitely needs to be part of our discussion. It
Are we
opens up a can of
post?
worms.
Do we feel comfortable that we're post? That's the big question. If people feel that it could be done safely, then it's a good thing to do because it's beneficial for so many reasons. The original purpose of this, again, in the 20-page thing, it was really to bring fun and activity to the village.
See, I think we should do it, and if people don't feel comfortable with attending, they don't attend.
That's right. I mean, Yankee Stadium is open at full capacity. It has been for over a month now.
Yeah, I guess.
And so I think
If I'm
that
going to go to a Giants game, I can't sweat the festa.
people are doing that. And yeah, I mean, so I think it's.
You can post signs without masks if you're not vaccinated.
I think that the only discussion is the day that we should select. You guys have done this years and years. I don't think that there is nothing to change other than viewing it from the point of view of post-COVID. And you guys, I guess, as a committee will come up with some of the regulations that you feel according to the health regulations that you should follow.
The chief was really concerned about doing fireworks because, there'd be too many people at the riverfront. I'm not sure because I'm not following it. Like, are there a lot of these things going on? Are we going to attract, we normally get, I think, 15,000 people at Ferry Festa. I mean, are we going to attract more? Is the chief still on? Maybe he could opine on whether he has concerns about that. But, I was very in favor of fireworks and we didn't do it because of the concern of overcrowdedness. And we have the same concern with Ferry Festa.
Is the chief?
He is.
It's like a TV show.
Yes.
Come on down.
Curtain number one.
Wait, hold on, chief. I have to pin you. Hold on.
I just feel that it's 3 months after a lot of companies are looking to go back to work in September. So by October, I think that our safety
If this
will
were
be
August,
better.
there might be a little.
Chief, what do you think about the event? And what do you think about, if you're okay with it, what do you think about a Saturday or a Sunday?
I don't think the day itself really affects the police department itself. I do historically, when we have the Furry Fest set up, we actually start notifying Westchester County DPS for the use of their auxiliaries this month. That's how far in advance we are trying to prepare. So, you know, I have no issues, you know, if we are going forward. I just, you know, this is where we normally prepare for this Furry Fest a few months back, historically, in the short time that I've been chief. You know, Patty and the other stakeholders that have been working to coordinate, you know, if memory serves correct, we really start going back, looking back into maybe March, was it, Patty, that we really start meeting together to like really discuss Furry Fest. So, you know,
we used to do it,
but we need time to prepare.
We used to do it like a whole bunch, and I think the last 2 years, I think everybody, you guys particularly, had it down so well. I think our first meeting last year was a June meeting for about half an hour, Village Hall, and then we did one more meeting. I mean, you understand how to do this perfectly. And it's, you know, unless we introduce something new, which I don't think we'd want to try in this year, I think we already know the drill. The main thing is, I mean, I have gotten already inquiries about, you know, vendors and stuff like that. People have contacted us and asked us if there's going to be a Fairy Festa this year. So the real test, I think, is if we're going to get the signups that we need to generate the cost to offset this to make it a non-taxpayer event.
So just so we're clear though, Chief, you're okay from a safety and health perspective, you have no objections to this event?
If we're trending well, I don't have any issues. I just need to be able to have the time to plan, which when I look back with the 4th, that was the other thing too, was planning was a little bit short. Like I said, if this is going to be a go, I'll be reaching out to Westchester County to see if I can reserve the sheriff's force to assist us like we've always used to supplement the officers we have. And, you know, we can set up our incident action plan for that date.
All right, well, we can, I guess also if numbers do become very high and we decide it is dangerous, we could always cancel it. But how much time do you need? Do we have to set a date today or?
I think you should set a date and we should circle to be ready to go full-fledged at your August meeting. But what I would do, and anyone else who wants to help with it, we would start doing the things like putting the updated form online, sending blasts out. And we can include something this year that reserves the right for the village to be tracking COVID. And if they need to make an emergency decision that says we're not, you know, we are canceling it, you know, we'll do that.
Okay, so let's just see if we get the temperature of the board here. So Mike, you would prefer Saturday?
Yeah, in absence of any real hard information from businesses like a survey, then yes.
Okay, Donna?
Yeah, that's been traditional. It's worked.
Laura? Okay, cool.
I'm fine with Saturday.
Okay, so October 2nd?
Mayor, I just want to say Liz corresponded with the school district and homecoming is scheduled to be held either Friday, October 1st or Saturday, October 2nd.
Good thing you.
But with the
said that.
second
Maybe we should
Saturday.
do,
The 9th, then?
well, that's Columbus Day weekend, maybe September 25th works and it doesn't coincide with any Jewish holidays this year.
Is that too late?
No, September
No, September
25th.
25th. Is that too early?
I'm sorry, is that too early?
I mean, whatever you guys decide, that's what we'll target on it and make that work. I mean, we did do a Columbus weekend one year and it worked out okay, but you know, there's probably more competition for things that weekend.
Weddings are completely booked, the whole entire county for, I don't want residents going to weddings and then us not having the residents that we want. That's a very hot day for weddings and this
Which one, the
year,
second?
October, the weekend of October, Columbus Day weekend.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
it's-
yeah, that next one.
Yeah, so I don't, you know, like if anybody's attending a wedding or any type of event, considering that everything is open, might not be the most ideal weekend for us to host.
What are our options though?
Well, I mean, homecoming
We
is,
did it on homecoming
homecoming-
weekend
Yeah, we-
once before. didn't
I
we?
actually think it works fairly well because you've got everybody all, psyched up and, I don't know that that's a
I
conflict.
did think we did it once before.
We did do it once before.
The only, actually, this goes back to Rick. He might not have had this experience yet. One of the concerns we had was when you have the Festa and you have the football, you're splitting your force.
Rick, how do you feel about that?
I personally think we're better off just doing it on the 25th.
Yeah, I prefer not to potentially split the department. I would like to focus on, hang on.
There you go.
Yeah, I prefer to be able to just concentrate on one event if possible.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll do
The
the 25th
25th.
of September 25th. All right, thank you, Rick. Okay, Patty? I'll be
Yeah,
there.
go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Elisa, make sure they all get their copy.
I will. It came this afternoon, 20 pages. I didn't.
20
remember anything with
pages.
But it's very quick read.
Broke the printer.
How to rate anything less than 5 pages?
Yeah, Patty, come on.
It only starts getting a little bit philosophical on the last page. When I start talking about subsidiarity and structure of democracy. And all that, but you guys, you can enjoy that.
Thank you,
All right,
Patty.
thank you.
So September 25th is the day.
Yes. Discussion item number 2 is a discussion of Play Street and Block Party applications. So we did get an application for a Play Street on Bellwood Avenue from Ashford to Wall Grove from 2 to 5 PM on Sunday, July 18th. Okay, that's a Sunday. Okay. Okay, so do we have to approve that?
So that was one of the questions we wanted to ask. We were talking about this internally. You've gotten a couple of requests for street closures. And we were talking with the clerk and whatnot, and we were wondering if in fact you did not want these to be handled as the same mode as a block party, and then it could be handled internally rather than bringing them each one back here.
What's the difference between us reviewing a block party versus a play party? Because it's really just, do you want to close the street from this intersection to that intersection? Aren't they the same
Exactly.
type of request?
I mean, fundamentally, it's used a little differently. I think one is used more by maybe neighbors than more immediate neighbors, whereas one brings kids and families from outside of the neighborhood.
Okay.
But the premise is pretty much identical, basically blocking off each end of the street and making sure that there's responsible parties to make sure that people that have to get in and out do get in and out, and that people are kept safe. So because it's fundamentally the same, we thought it'd be easier if we just handled it through the clerk's office as an application for a block party.
I would think so.
Are block parties being handled? We're not voting on those anymore?
I think we took that away, right?
I'm fine with that. I just wasn't sure we did that. Liz?
There, if the block party was like a larger block party or something, it would be brought before the board, but if it's just like a small block party, there's no need for it to go before the board, so.
The threshold, like 50 or less or 50 or more?
Well, I mean, if there were some people who were having just like, a food truck for 5 families, but then there's some that want to have, if they want to have jumpy castles and bands or something, this is
Right.
something a little more intense, so.
I think we should formalize that somehow or other.
I agree.
Okay, so my sense of it is, I don't think we have to be involved in any of that.
There's an
But-
application.
I mean, they're fundamentally.
No, we understand that. We know there's an
Okay.
application pending.
No, there's an application that people submit for block parties to Liz
Yeah.
already, so it could be the same for Play Street.
Right, that's fine. I think it should be. And then the village staff can approve it in conjunction with the police department and DPW and that kind of thing. Okay.
So if that's okay, that's the way we'll handle them going forward. Meanwhile, you have this one before you this evening, so if you want to look at it, otherwise we'll just review them.
Okay, so I guess I have to make, is there a motion to approve this request? Trustee DeRozzi, second trustee Sullivan, all in favor? It's approved. Okay, so let's move to resolutions.
Mayor, we're gonna ask to table resolution number 1. We need some additional information. So that would come off the agenda for tonight.
Okay. And we've already done number 2. Action item number 2 then, I guess, will be resolution authorizing submission of the CFA grant application for High Street Park upgrades. And I know that you've given us today, I think, right? The dollars and cents on the High Park upgrades.
And Valerie is actually on to speak to this, but
Okay, put her on.
Valerie, can you hear us?
and Suzanne Nolan as well.
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, it's so loud, Jen. Is there a way to lower it a little bit?
Don't know how to do.
Okay, so welcome, and maybe you can provide information to us, Valerie?
I think Suzanne is also on or Susan Nolan is also on the phone as well. She actually was assisting with the development of the actual cost estimates. Actually, the revised cost estimates, they were based upon 2014 bid documents that the village sent out, and Sue was taking a look at upgrading or updating those particular cost estimates. And she actually had some additional information to provide to the board to get you a better sense of what's probably needed at that site. So at least I don't know if you can find her and bring her.
Yeah, she's on.
Okay, so I'm going to turn it over to her right now and have her kind of walk the board through the budget that she sent over, and then we can talk about the grant and then ultimately the board's decision whether to continue pursuing this grant or not.
All right, hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So, the pricing is based on the cost, the scope of work from 2014. The project had actually been bid back in 2014, and it was bid in 2 separate sections, and it came in, I think, over the estimate, and part of the work was done. The tree clearing was done, and so basically this scope of work is, reinvigorating that original scope of work from 2014 with some, a little bit of, tweaking and, being more specific, I think, about what the landscape will be. But, it's really, the assumption is that the stairs would be rehabilitated. That has remained completely the same. And basically the pricing is based on the bid prices that, came in, adjusted for inflation over these 7 years.
So just so we're clear on this, the total price now would be $415,637, correct?
Based on what came in 2014, adjusted for current prices, that is a fair estimate.
And our contribution would have to be 50% of that, correct?
Well, I think that what is being requested now are the construction funds. So, I mean, Valerie, you can correct me on that, but I believe that the board would be acting on the construction costs.
Right, so that's correct. It would be the 364,000.
And our responsibility is half.
The grant would be 182,318.
Thank you.
That's correct.
And
But ultimately, the board will need to clearly undertake the design, and the construction management would have to be part of the project.
which is all us, right?
Sorry.
That would be all us, right? That would be on, that extra $51,000 would be coming straight from us, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
And I think maybe Suzanne can speak to the fact that there are certain areas of the pricing that didn't have a 2014 estimate because it's that much later now with the overgrowth. So you have to essentially start over with removing trees that have had a chance to grow up that weren't necessarily present in 2015 when you originally estimated. I believe that's my understanding. If if I'm wrong, you should correct me.
No, you're absolutely right. So, tree removals were done, but invasive, control and management wasn't continued. So now there's, instead of this kind of shady Norway maple forest, now there's full-blown saplings all over of black locusts that like the sun. So there is some, the site moved forward, but then it took a couple steps back with regard to the invasive species. So that's something that needs to be addressed also and is in the estimate.
Okay, so how does the board feel about it?
Isn't that something that our DPW or Parks Department could do some on so that the cost is a little bit less? A lot more money.
You mean the site cleaning?
The tree overgrowth or whatever they're talking about.
Well, I think some of it is, it involves, land clearing and a chipper, and it's hard to access. I think ongoing, once a stable landscape is established, I think at that point, DPW might be able to do some of the ongoing maintenance. But right now, it's a very dynamic overgrowth that is probably pretty hard for DPW to handle.
I think we need to know that the DPW can do it after, otherwise we're investing money to fix it and then we can't maintain it again.
Yeah, that's what happened. We invested money into this initially, and then it wasn't kept up, and now it's costing us the same thing again. I mean, even more.
And Valerie, is it a dollar match, or can you match with in-kind services? So if, for example, the DPW could do some of the land clearing, would that go toward the village's match, or is it a dollar match?
I believe an in-kind services can be provided. I don't have the grant information in front of me right now. I apologize, I'm in the car driving from another meeting, so I can follow up with the board on that tomorrow, but I do believe in-kind services are allowed.
Well, I don't want to volunteer anyone. I did discuss this with the Conservation Advisory Board, and a number of their members have expressed interest in volunteering time, services, and the like. I'm also happy to chip in, but I think that we can look at all that. I think we should get an answer about that, and then look at it. If that brought our, look, we're stuck with the design and construction costs, and we're going to be in for something because repair of those stairs are just going to be expensive. But perhaps some of the sort of less intense work could be undertaken by volunteers or DPW.
What's the deadline for this? When do we have to make a decision? When does it have to be submitted?
July 26th, is it, Valerie?
Yes, it's actually at the end of July, yes.
Right.
So I don't know if there's a way that the resolution could read not to exceed. Maybe that gives a little bit of wiggle room so that if for some reason we can do some in-kind services and reduce the costs.
So we're currently, as per your request, we're currently working on a 10-year capital plan for investments and capital needs of the village, which would include the renovation of this parkland. We're expecting to get a report from Honeywell by this Friday. We're going to have a sit-down meeting with them in terms of the capital projects that they recommend. I think that you have to, Jeff and the board would have to identify a source of funds for whatever goes into this project, whether it's 100,000 or 180. And I have to say that I had a really good conversation with Suzanne last week. I had no idea that the numbers were going to come in like this, and they just came in either today or yesterday. So it was hard to navigate them. I would really like to see if there was any kind of a maybe a smaller project. I know this is an area that's very much in need, but you have huge capital potentials in this village, including finishing up the work at Gould Park, et cetera. And I think it would be great to, obviously you guys have done a bunch of work on it before. The the problem with a lot of municipalities, not unique to Dobbs Ferry, is you have to maintain this. And that was the problem when I talked to Suzanne, just what I think Nicole was saying. And, it wasn't maintained. You can't do these projects and then not maintain them because you're throwing money out the window. So if we could possibly come up with something that would be a smaller project that would allow, perhaps access through the stairs in a sitting park or something a little more passive that didn't cost $400,000, you might just consider that.
Okay,
And I think
so-
it's very hard to commandeer DPW and volunteers, no matter how, goodwill they are. So I just caution.
Right, so in a time frame wise, how would we come up with
Well, I
another?
think Valerie should go to the grant and look first to see if in-kind services even qualify. And then make sure that in-kind services that are not paid, maybe volunteer that qualify. And meanwhile, maybe we can look at a little bit of a scaled down project. I
Right,
mean,
how
to
will we
put
vote on it
$400,000 into this property is a lot of money. You
How do
gotta
we
figure
vote?
you're gonna have to have at least $50,000 to $75,000 of maintenance every year. You're not gonna be able to maintain that.
Right, but the decision has to be made by July 26th. How are we going to approach that?
Well, I mean, these, to bring these grants forward for resolution, I don't think you even did that before. So we've been trying to create a good record for you all. You can either approve it subject to, or you can wait and just not approve it by resolution. And, we can get a consensus later.
Okay.
Or you might be able to call a special meeting of the board just to get a quorum to make a vote. So that's clearly acceptable as well, since it'll be a single item agenda. Liz and I could handle the special meeting notice as required. It does seem like you have a number of conditions, so it's not an easy conditioned upon one item. It looks like it's really a decision-making process.
The problem is we have to be here in person now to do that, but okay, we can do that. So let's table this and get more information and we can then move forward one way or another, or a smaller scale project. Is that, I shouldn't even speak. I mean, is that okay with everybody?
I mean, great if you could do it, because it could be a great resource, but that's a lot of money right now, all the other issues that we have.
Yeah, and you could hold a special meeting on a Saturday or Sunday, even when people are available to just come and take up the issue to vote.
Mike, what are you thinking?
Is the CFA grant, and I apologize, I think we discussed this at the previous meeting, but this is something that was sort of just identified very recently, and it's due at the end of the month. And is this a yearly thing? Is this a
CFA? Yes.
Yeah.
But I
Yes.
think, Valerie, the criteria changes every year, or would this be available next year?
I believe it will be. This grants that or the funds that have been identified for this particular project do appear every year. So it is something that you could also consider, looking at a little bit more carefully over the next year, come up with a little bit more scaled back design, and then potentially go for a grant again the following year.
That's right. So the original, after I met with the CAB about the site a few months ago, along with Ed Manley from the building department, and we talked a little bit about what we thought was a potential, and Ms. Nolan, a potential path forward to develop the site. And one of the suggestions by Ms. Nolan was that the design of this park include sort of very low maintenance type of plantings and type of design. And so part of our process was to work on a design that was in part viable through volunteers and in part only could be done by a construction company, for example, stairs or some of the larger tree removals, and look at a sort of phasing of that. And I wonder if with a little more careful design process, so maybe we look to Ms. Nolan to do the design component now or in the next few months, we work with her and the CAB to try to tailor that so that some of the work can be done, and then we look maybe next year to apply for this grant for the portion that we know when we have hard, bids and we really know what we're talking about.
Okay, so you're suggesting tabling it totally till next year?
I am, but I'm also open to if Ms. Manastro or Ms. Nolan have other comments
Right.
about that.
So I think, we were really, when the CFAs came out, we identified projects that have been contemplated before in the past, or you already have some design work have completed and would be eligible for the CFAs. I think it makes sense since, the last design, was done in 2014. And I know one of the things that has been raised is that the design work or the bid documents do not include looking at those stairs or doing much restoration to the stairs. And that has been another 6 or 7 years. So it might be worth also taking a look at the stairs again, just to make sure that those are indeed, completely adequate and do not need any upgrades beyond what was identified in 2014.
Okay. Or we could decide that the other grants that we have coming up, like Gould Park, we'd rather put the money towards High Street Park. I mean, that's also something, right? I mean, it looks like. So, Maura, what do you think?
I do agree that is a little bit costly for the times. I would love to see a design with a lower scale and see what we are able to accomplish on a smaller scale.
Okay, Nicole?
I agree. And if there's a way for us to internally or with volunteers work on what they call it, increased vegetation or whatever, we should do that to make it a nicer park in the meantime.
So you're okay with putting it over for next year, but in the meantime doing work, or do you want us to work on getting a smaller project for this year?
Well, can we put in for all these CFA grants, or are we choosing?
CFA is just the repository for all the available funding. So this particular source of funding is the Environmental Protection Fund Grants Program, Parks Preservation and Heritage. Those funds are available every year repeatedly. So you're asking for two programs under that particular pot of money. And then you're also asking for a separate pot of money, but it's a single application. A number of years ago, they consolidated into a consolidating funding application for all of the available funding.
I'm open to having something smaller this year. I think we keep kicking things down the road and just need to finish things.
But whatever we do, it has to be something that it does not overgrow the way that historically that site has overgrown. A few years back, there was a $43,000 investment that was done on cleaning that site, and look at it now. So what can be done that it will be more permanent, that we will not have this constant problem?
I think if I could just say about the money that was spent on tree removal, I think that back in the day, the tree removal was done assuming that then the project would move forward, but I don't think it did. And so the problem is you just can't remove the trees and not put something else back. Because basically, the void was filled by the invasives that liked the sunny site rather than the shady site that had been there. So the idea moving forward is that this site will always need some kind of management. It's just that what goes in has to match what kind of inputs and management the village will be capable of moving forward. And so the idea is to have as stable a landscape as possible that needs as little input as possible in the future. It will need intensive inputs at the beginning.
I mean, my sense is that we should do it properly, and if it means putting it over till next year to get a final full view of what would be appropriate, and then if from there maybe we could do, if that's not possible, then to do another version of it. We at least would have a whole, we would have spent time researching it and doing the work on it. So that's the way I feel about it. So what are we all saying? Put it over? Put it all right with taking it back and for next year, or what? I just feel it's rushed. It's like in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
We don't even have documents, we don't have bids, we don't have documents of what we want there. I think it's just, it's unfortunate that we didn't have a little more time to plan for this for the grant applications due, but it seems to me that who knows what those stairs, what's happened in 7 years. Maybe maybe it's not 185, it's three and a quarter to build them new. I don't.
My understanding was that they had gone and looked at it before they gave us this quote, no?
No, this is the quote that was previously given in 2014, adjusted for inflation, 5% rate per year. So this is not a rebid. This is not, no one has gone out and looked at this. No one, we just took the numbers.
Well, no, it does say the concrete stairs and handrail continue to be in a condition that can be repaired and restored.
Yeah. So that's the assumption.
Right.
So those are assumptions.
I don't think that we can in good faith.
At the time, we weren't sure.
Well, I don't think we can in good faith commit funds this way based on
Alright, forget it.
assumptions, so.
Okay, thank you. We're just gonna then withdraw that one and move it for next year.
But I would like, but would be, we should look at, the design component. And, I don't know how maybe that's for a that's not this agenda item.
Yeah.
But I would like to get that on the agenda soon, and then we can think about this seriously and plan for.
Pay for it,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay. All right, so let's move to action item number 4 is the resolution authorizing submission of a CFA grant application for the installation of a basketball court and lights at Gould Park. Those numbers, I'm assuming, are still valid.
Yes.
Okay, so the basketball court total would be $314,248. Our share would be $157,124. So I know we've looked at this, we've discussed it. So are we ready to move forward on this and authorize this application?
We discussed the new basketball court and lights.
I thought we did.
Probably just discussed the stairs and the landscape.
Yeah.
I don't think this-
Kendra told us a little bit about the project, but just.
Yeah.
She's here.
Yes.
I don't recall a full-on
Yeah,
discussion.
the
about
CDBG project is the stairs and the pathway.
that. Right, I know, but I don't recall.
Yes.
Okay, sorry. There's probably another 4-hour meeting.
We've still got another hour or so to go, I think. tonight.
Yeah, right.
Can you hear us?
I can, yes.
Kendra, can you just give us a little background on the grant application?
For the basketball court.
Yeah.
This one was new to me. We talked about it at the last meeting. We had talked about putting it in to refurbish the existing court because it's not level, and then the possibility of possibly switching it because of the north-south light, and that it's not ideal for basketball games.
What are
So
the
we thought-
lights? Sorry, go ahead.
And then we wanted to update the lighting because they're not LED lights. So we wanted to kind of make them more efficient in the process.
Jeff, is our matching fund something that comes out of the rec fund? Is there money there for that, or is it something else?
That's a good question. I'm not sure oh, sorry, Jeff.
Sorry, I was asking Jeff.
I'd have to take a look at the rec on where we're at right now. There's other ways to get it done though, fund balance.
All right, no.
I don't know. Rich, you mentioned that we may have a lot of other expenses to incur, and this seems to me.
Well, we do. I mean, I was just saying in the context of the proposal that just came in like that. So, but I mean, this is further work on your park. I mean, this.
And that basketball court is used a lot.
Yeah. And I think it's a work on a park that's, you put a lot into. It's a pretty nice park right now, actually. So you don't have, as I understand, you don't have any monies in the rec fund right now. You may be getting more. For now, you would have to take it out of fund balance. That's the only source of funds, or you can bond it. But, we're not really ready to go for a big bonding project. Usually put them all together. So probably if you identify this, you would take it out of your fund balance, and the monies are available.
And this would finish the park, really. We would have then.
It'll finish this aspect of the
If we get the
park, right?
CDBG grant.
Yeah.
Kendra's always got great ideas for that park. So finish is a relative term.
It's still dreaming of a camp house.
Yes, it should be. Okay, so is there a motion to move this forward? Trustee Patino, second trustee Sullivan, all in favor? Okay, that passes unanimously. Next, God bless you. The next one is a submission of a CFA grants application for the Dobbs Ferry Comprehensive Plan. And that would cost $175,000, and our match, that would be $100,000.
Valerie's here to speak to that as well.
Okay, Valerie.
Yes, so the match for this particular grant application, they don't allow for, you can only go up to about 90% of your total costs. And so I was suggesting at this point that the state actually likes to see a higher match, especially with this particular grant program. So I was suggesting that, $175,000, and that the village match with the, I believe it's 75,000 and then the $100,000 for the grant.
Is there-
No, this is written that the match is 100.
Yeah.
Right.
Should it be 75?
Yes,
So it says, submit an application for 75 with a match of 100. It should be the opposite.
No,
Wait, it's
contrary to what you said.
175. Mine says 175 for the plan. And then we do,
It says it,
no,
Oh, yeah, then I
no,
see
Lori Lee,
75.
the way you have it written is correct. I
okay,
apologize.
so you're
The way you
going
have
to
it written.
apply for grant funding of 75.
That's
And you're
correct.
gonna guarantee, you're gonna commit to provide 100
Yes,
as a
yes.
match.
But this
Yes.
provides a grant to do like a review of our entire comprehensive plan.
That is correct. It's based upon the initial scope that the board sent out a
Right, but
little
we
over a
sent,
year ago.
we sent that out kind of as like a catch-all, but I think, and Vinny or Donna could probably correct me if I'm wrong. It was more like we wanted to focus on looking at the downtown part of the comprehensive plan to make sure that it was being used in line with our zoning code, because it seemed like there were a lot of projects coming in and some of the boards didn't think there was enough teeth in the comprehensive plan to use it as a basis to reject projects or not. But we were more concerned, I think, with the
And the
5
EI zone.
areas in the EI zone.
Yeah.
Not the full, it could be a limited part of the plan, because it seems like a lot of money for something that we did 10 or 11 years ago. It's not that old. I mean, it's old, but it's not that old of a plan.
So your actual proposal that went out looked
Yeah.
at a couple different scenarios. It looked at, could you take the initial, the current comprehensive plan and only update it? And it also looked at taking, once you do the analysis, if for some reason you needed a whole entire comprehensive plan, how much would that cost? So this grant right now is assuming a new comprehensive plan along with some of the additional studies that you were and analyses that you were looking at as part of that overall scope, which included some economic development analyses, traffic analyses, parking analyses, et cetera. That being said, depending upon what the actual grant provides, you can change and modify the scope as needed. The grant will be written in a very generalized scope, but the cost estimates that I provided this board were based upon the actual responses you received on the proposal, assuming the full comprehensive plan rewrite. So it is less, the cost estimate is less of a conservative, actually, it's a very conservative cost estimate because this is assuming the complete rewrite of comprehensive plan along with all the additional analyses that you identified back in 2020.
Right, but what if we only want to do part of that? Like look at the comprehensive plan as it concerns the downtown and the EI, wouldn't it be significantly less
It
money?
would, that's correct.
And what do we want to just put in? Because if we get this grant, do we have to use all of it and max 100,000? Or are you saying we could get the grant money and say what we want is only 50,000, they would give us 25 and we would get 25 or something like that?
That's correct. You can revise scopes with the state. You just can never ask for more money, but you can always ask for less money.
That's fine.
Yeah, that works. Yeah.
Okay, so is there a motion to submit this grant application? Trustee Sullivan, second trustee Patino, all in favor? That passes unanimously.
Mayor, could I suggest we skip
Yes,
to agenda
I was-
item 9
yes, I
for
was
the
gonna do
gentleman?
that. I was gonna, they're giving me the evil eye. I feel it, so.
They didn't come at 6 p.m.
So
They're smart.
let's skip down to the resolution for emergency expenditure for repairs to the tower ladder truck. Work to be performed by Firematic Supply Company. Come on up. Tell us why we have to do this. What happened?
Well, I'll give you a picture. Our routine service with our mechanic that gets done every year, we sent him to be qualified in our new fleet because we got a bunch of Pierces.
While doing it, he noticed that there was hydraulic fluid on the bottom and it's been for quite a bit. He sent me pictures. He said it's got to go to where we got the truck in Patterson, New York. When they inspected it, they said the actual extension pistons, which put the ladder up to in the air, 110 feet, they're leaking. So the only way to do any kind of work like that is take the whole truck apart. We had to get a crane rental. They had to take all of it out. You'll see in that one picture, the 3 pistons laying on the ground.
Yeah.
All 3 pistons are leaking.
Wow.
This truck is 2 years old. However, the truck committee at the time, they went with a refurb on the boom and the ladder to save money. And we basically brought our pistons and ladder onto the new chassis. So Firematic did, Pierce, I should say, did redo the fittings, redid the hoses, redid everything up to that point, but it's still a 30-year-old piece of metal piston that internally, as of right now, the only price I have right now is $9,600 for the crane rental and the labor to remove all those parts. Now, as of right now, they went to the cylinder shop that they deal with on a flatbed Friday morning. So I don't believe they got work done yet. Before any work is done, they need to look inside each piston. Because one of them, maybe A, B, and C is wrong, maybe just A, B is wrong, whatever it is, and then they can give me an updated estimate on the price. They're thinking anywhere between $2,000 and $7,000 a piston. So we're already around 10,000, like I just said. The 2,000 to 7,000, we don't know where we lay with that, and then the crane to get back and to put it back together. This is something beyond our control. I'm already down this truck. Last week, that Thursday storm, we ran 17 calls in 2.5 hours.
Wow.
We called Ardsley, Hastings, and Irvington to come help us. We have the other engine downstairs that is in and out of service. It's over 20 years old that needs to be replaced, and that goes in and out of service as well. As of right now, I'm down half a fleet. I have 2 engines that we could rely on that get out the door. One of them's our spare, which only holds half the amount of manpower, half the amount of equipment. We're making do with what we have based on that. I'm calling all the other towns, they don't have a problem coming to us, but we really shouldn't be relying on the other towns when we have our own equipment. So like I said, it was just basically, I need to wait for them to examine everything internally so I can get back with a price for you guys.
If it's 30 years old, I mean, is it more cost effective to invest in new pistons?
Yes and no. The problem is with the aerial scope brand that the old tower ladder was that we have, they're out of business. So for
The one
them
from 2019?
I'm sorry?
The one from 2019?
No, the original one.
Aerial scope was a 91 and it was refurbed, so being that it came off a 91 truck and went on to 2019 body, they can't just replace those aerial scope pistons, so they take them out and they recondition them. There's no way to get a new one.
So basically what they're doing is putting all Pierce parts into the older pistons, which, like I said, we tried to save $300,000 when we got the truck. Instead of spending 1.3 on the ladder, it was 998,000. We tried to save that money there, but now that aerial scope is out of business and Pierce is the only one able to work on this truck, because if anybody else touches it, avoids any other warranty and anything else that we have left. But because we came with basically our own equipment, we're responsible for that. Like I said, you see it in the pictures, the hoses are brand new.
No, I understand the emergency. I'm not questioning the veracity of the pictures or what you're saying. I'm just thinking long-term, it seems like this is a Band-Aid on a problem that could keep happening.
It's
So
very possible. I mean, this is the
trying to
main
figure out a
part.
long-term solution to, since they have a 2019 truck with a 30.
I mean, the only thing we could do at that point is say, okay, throw it out, give us what you guys wanted to begin with. And then you're looking at a $300,000 project, and who knows how long that truck got to be out of service. I don't believe the place in Patterson, New York can even do that. The truck was actually manufactured in Wisconsin. We went out there to, examine it, do the whole specs, right? You remember all that? That would have to be on them, and that's something that we would have to talk. If that's a possibility and that's the way you guys want to go, I mean, that's something I could get in touch with Firematic and see the route. But I mean, as of right now, if we're looking at a $30,000, $40,000 repair, maybe to get us through the life of this truck, I mean, like we said, the ladder, the bucket, the boom, the turntable, everything that we came with, it's already 20-something years old.
What's the life of the truck?
Life is 20. But that's with the new chassis, all the new equipment that we have, that's 20 years old, but we, like I said, to save money, took the ladder, turntable, all that stuff up, down on a new truck.
I know, I've been trying to figure out what the life of that stuff is, like.
Yeah, it's hit or miss. Like I said, there's people that, there's a lot of refurb. When we went out there was about 10 departments that had their ladders, just like us, on the ground, they refurb. It's just the luck of the draw.
Okay, but can I authorize this without having a specific?
I'm just gonna ask, so you're estimating right now that you've already spent 10, and that was for the rental of the crane and
The crane and removal of the piston.
okay, and now it's being assessed.
Yes.
And in the worst case scenario, it'll be 7 per piston, and how many we talking about?
3. So 21,000 on top of that, and then labor to get the crane back and to reinstall them in the truck.
That's probably like
So
40 to
probably, I would say
50,000.
you're probably looking about 40,000, give or take.
And I'm
But
doing,
like I said, I mean, it's something,
Okay, so you can say a not to exceed amount, and that will give them go ahead to get at least the 10K
But
and
is
the
it-
possible 21K. And then if they need to go higher, they can return
right,
after the fact to amend this.
but is it always with Firematic? Everything? that
yes,
you
it has to be.
said?
Yeah,
Okay,
because
so it's
they're
not
the
to exceed
manufacturers
what?
of the truck. They're on state contract as well. Because of the manufacturers of the truck, we have no choice but to use somebody who's certified on that, because any other thing that they touch, it could void a warranty or anything like that.
Right.
And Jeff, would that be acceptable if they did a not to exceed 40 on an emergency basis? And then, you gentlemen will know
Right.
in the next
He's
couple
keeping
of
me
weeks.
close. I actually spoke to him this afternoon. I called him. I reminded him tonight was our board meeting. Said, do you have anything else? He goes, I don't. He goes, they went out Friday morning. He goes, the cylinder shop didn't call him, on the weekend, who's gonna really work. He goes, I can tell you right now, you're at 96, labor, crane. That's it. He goes, the minute he finds something out, because like I said, each piston is between 2 and 7. One might be 2, one might be 5, one might be 7.
So we'll
We don't know
just
the-
estimate all 3 at
Right,
7.
and then we'll go from
And
there.
we'll say not to exceed 40, and then when you gentlemen have a better idea if it's going to exceed, you can, then this can be.
Yeah, the minute I find information out, I will pass it along to
Okay,
the
great.
mayor and administrator.
So is there a motion to authorize the interim village administrator to enter into a contract with Firematic Supply Company on an emergency basis for repair of the village's tower ladder truck not to exceed $40,000? Trustee Patino, second trustee Cassell, all in favor? Done.
Thank you.
Okay.
Good luck.
Thank you.
No flyers.
Okay.
All right, resolution appointing Ally Manning as youth service librarian 1 for 17 hours per week, an hourly rate of $26.50. Is there a motion? Trustee Sullivan, second trustee DeVazio, all in favor? That passes unanimously. A resolution for emergency expenditure of the purchase and installation of a new variable frequency drive at the Gould Park Pool in the sum of $2,180 from Norberto Pool Services. I don't know if Kendra's still on the line. Kendra?
Do we need an explanation of this one?
You're right.
Or- yeah.
Andrew, can you hear us?
I can hear you, yes.
So something broke that wasn't supposed to break?
Correct, and we need to repair it, and there's only one place we can get it from, and it's through Norberto, and the piece itself is coming from Pentair, who makes it. So that's why it's an emergency purchase, because we don't have 3 prices for it.
And is any of this under warranty? Because this is all last year.
No, it expired like a month or 2 before, so that's why they're like allowing us to purchase it at like a discounted rate, because usually it costs like 3 times as much as we're paying for it.
Are we getting a warranty for this?
Yes, there's a 2-year warranty on it.
All right, is there a motion to authorize?
There was a less than 2-year warranty on the first time.
No, it was 2 years. It was purchased back 2 years
2
ago.
years from
and
the
then-
purchase date, not the installation date.
Correct.
We didn't even use it probably for the first year.
Nope.
I didn't use it last year either.
Correct. Very, very.
was defect.
Not so much.
Was more, I don't know, Laura, maybe, I don't know.
No, a $2,000 part, you know what it would cost you to argue a defect.
Motion made by trustee Sullivan, second trustee DeRosa, all in favor, passes unanimously. It seems that these things shouldn't be breaking down so quickly.
Yeah, but it was a couple of months.
Richard, this is for the library. You have something.
Yes, the librarian is here this evening.
Okay, so
This is basically sort of chronic problems that come up with the compressors and the condensers there. Basically, 3 out of the 4 failed. And we're looking for a long-term solution, but in the meanwhile, the library needs air conditioning in order to function during the summer. So Elizabeth, I'll turn it over to you.
So what we believe happened is those 2 90-degree days back in the beginning of June, I don't even know the dates of them. KVS came out and the temperature inside the sound barrier was 125 degrees.
Oh.
And the condenser units are just not, he said basically not even ones that are made to be in Arizona can withstand that kind of temperature. And
So Liz, we just need to know though, is this the price that, for now, because I know that there's a whole design issue, what we're gonna do in the future. But
Yes.
is this the price, 27,000, or did something else come in that was lower?
something came in that was lower today.
Okay,
And I had asked for, when I had asked for the quotes, I'd asked them to get them to me as soon as possible. It's hard because this is the absolute high season. So I don't want to, I'm not throwing the other guys under the bus. They just got it to us when they could. Their bid was 23,875, I think, the second bid that came in today. It does not include removing the north and south walls of the enclosure, which is one of the things that the engineer highly recommended doing, because the sound enclosure is part of the problem, is that it's keeping the hot air in there.
so the $27,000 bid that we have does include that?
Yes.
Okay, so
Oh,
I
so
guess
it's
we
not
should go
apples to
forward.
apples.
It's not apples
So-
to apples.
So we're okay with approving this, Laura? Okay, all right,
As long
so,
as Jeff is good.
okay, so is there a motion authorizing the emergency expenditure for the HVAC repair of the Dobbs Ferry Public Library, work to be performed by K&S HVAC for the sum of 27,000. Trustee Sullivan, second trustee Patino, all in favor? That passes unanimously. Thank you, Liz. Good,
Thank you.
try to stay cool in there, I guess.
Thank you.
A resolution authorizing the purchase of a used garbage truck from the village of Ardsley in the sum of $8,000. We do have a memo from Jennifer Dorman explaining the situation. I guess we're buying Ardsley surplus.
Yes,
We're buying garbage surplus from Ardsley, okay.
yes.
But you explain it, it seems to be a viable option for us, so is there a motion to authorize this expenditure? $8,000.
I mean, you just spent 27,000.
What's another 8?
Well, just so I can put it for the public's benefit, there is a garbage truck that the village of Ardsley declared as surplus. It still works, and we're going to purchase it from the village of Ardsley in the amount of $8,000. It's a garbage truck that collects garbage and will also be able to pick up.
Well, right now, our only spare that we have can only pick up brush.
Right.
So we want to get rid of that one, auction it off, and use the garbage truck from Ardsley to do everything any other garbage truck can do, not just pick up brush.
Right, and hopefully the auction item will offset some of the 8,000.
Yeah, and also, we're replacing one of the parts from it needed a new piston, so we're taking the part from our old garbage truck that we're gonna auction off and put it in the garbage truck from Ardsley, so we don't have to.
We just had a problem with pistons.
We're solving problems with pistons.
I
now.
like it, I like it.
Okay, so is there a motion to authorize this purchase for $8,000? Trustee DeRosa, second, trustee Tino, all in favor? That passes unanimously.
Thank you.
We have a resolution authorizing the interim village administrator to sign a one-year renewal of the Impact Records Management System Service Agreement with Central Square in the amount of $16,428.30, effective August 1st, 2021. In support of that, we have a memo from the chief dated July 6, 2021, detailing why this contract is necessary and justifying the increase in price. Are there any questions regarding this? Is there a motion to authorize this? Trustee Sullivan, second. Trustee Casal, all in favor? That passes unanimously. We have to schedule, well, the question is, should we schedule a public hearing on August 10th, 2021 to consider amendments to the Village Code, Chapter 55, Section 2, regarding the library board terms of office? We have a memo from the Dobbs Ferry Public Library Board of Trustees dated June 25th, 2021, explaining why they believe the bylaws of the library should be amended to reflect a length of time that a person serves on the library board. This only has to be done via the Board of Trustees, and we have to have a public hearing to address that, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so is there a motion to schedule a public hearing on August 10th, 2021 at 6:30 or as soon thereafter as possible? Trustee DeRozzi, second. Trustee Sullivan, all in favor?
You have a proposed local law in the package, so we'll make sure that that's available for the public too.
Yeah, they've just been having trouble getting candidates for the position because of the term.
I should make a comment about the length of time for the Board of Trustees for the village. Maybe we should.
It's 2 years, not 5.
Maybe we should extend that.
Oh, fine.
I should swap it. I can draft it that way if you want me to.
There's a resolution to approve the audit of claims as submitted and recommended by the village treasurer. This is, Jeff, this is the usual, nothing unusual. Okay. Is there a motion? Trustee Sullivan, second. Trustee Patino, all in favor? That passes unanimously.
I just asked, I was looking back over the correspondence from the cannabis stuff, Laura Lee, that somebody had asked a question that we didn't ask earlier. Is there a way for Dobbs Ferry to implement local law ordinances that increases the fines for underage individuals possessing or using cannabis products?
That's actually a state law. So there's a way that you could lobby the state legislature to do that, but that's in the penal code. So we don't have the ability to do that.
Okay, that's good to know.
Well, that reminds me that I should do this. I should acknowledge the receipt of a correspondence regarding the cannabis legalization from Paul Friedman dated July 11, 2021. And I also should acknowledge correspondence received from Peggy and Larry Bizard to the Board of Trustees dated July 12, 2021. So we have acknowledged receipt of those and they are part of our record. I also want to acknowledge an email from Elaine Trader dated July 13th, 2021, in support of allowing cannabis shops in the village. Okay. Minutes. Is there a motion to accept the minutes of June 22nd, 2021? Is everybody here? Everybody looks okay. Trustee Sullivan, Trustee Razi, all in favor? That's adopted. Tree Commission, who's on that? Okay. I know that we have gotten the agendas for the Tree Commission, from the trees that should be removed. AHRB,
That's Kristen.
that's Christie also. Planning Board, July 1st.
Yeah, not, the only thing that might be of interest to the general public is 156 Palisade does have a new architect and they are submitting new plans, and there's discussion about the affordable housing unit, which we have not settled, which I will talk with. The Affordable Housing Task Force is going to be looking at that as well.
Okay.
There has been no official submission from them about their request. So I don't know if we should start or not. Laura Lee can tell me.
if they're going to request a waiver, that needs to come back here for a public hearing before it proceeds.
Right, but yeah, we haven't received anything in writing or anything from them. It's just mentioned at the planning board meeting.
Great, we'll wait for an official request.
Youth services?
Well, I was going to announce the youth services council coordinator position, but it's been paused, which Richard will probably fill me in later. We do have summer movie nights back. This year appears to be that it's going to be in Gold Park and not the waterfront. And it starts on July 16 at 8:45. In your blanket?
I'm trying to think of the movie.
Scooby?
Scooby, I saw it. Okay.
You know that we feature one every, I mean, it's funny because this flyer didn't have all of the movies that we are going to feature, so surprise, stay tuned.
Okay, anybody else want to report on any of the other ad hoc committees?
Just the Senior Advocacy Committee, they're gearing up for the opening of the senior center. They're working on some really exciting programs, and the committee could use more members. So please, if you're all interested, it'd be great to have new people with some new input. And you do not have to be a senior to be on the advocacy committee, just need to have interest in the senior programs.
What's going on with the furniture? Did we get the furniture? The embassy?
We just ordered it the last week.
Here.
Kendra,
I
you
think
still
it
here?
was several weeks out,
Was it?
like.
Yeah. Seems like a
Right.
lifetime ago.
We just ordered it, so it's a few
You
weeks
guys
out.
have a better memory than me. Okay. Anything else?
The Human Rights and Diversity Committee will have a meeting on Monday, July 19th.
Anybody have any announcements to make?
Ashford is quieter.
Is it?
Most of the plates are up, but I think it would be useful for neighbors, I mean, really everyone, to have an update from Con Ed,
Right.
to
Yeah.
maybe
So, Alyssa,
include
we
in the
have-
next newsletter or something.
So Alyssa and I have spoken about that because I have gotten a lot of emails from people and they were complaining about lack of updates on that project. But it is a Con Edison project. We really don't have any control over when it can be done. And I know we have been in contact with Con Ed on a regular basis, correct?
Yes, we have, and I think the DPW is as well.
Yes.
Trying to get a final schedule that we can share with the public.
Okay, so we will try to put something in the newsletter. Every time the newsletter goes out, something about it, because I know it must be, it's worse than frustrating, and I understand that. So, and I did tell, in the emails, I did say there were 3 trustees who live either on Ashford or right off Ashford.
Right in front.
So you guys feel their pain.
Right.
Right, so I did put that in my emails to the public, that you guys are living it as well, so.
Living it, but not loving. Yeah. I think
Okay.
15 and I got the best of it.
Well, I will say that they're accommodating. I did ask them to remove the plates and put in, fill it, so it would be a little less noisy. They did do that. I mean, they're very nice crew. The officers that are out there, I just, they are working incredibly hard. They're there in the pouring rain and in the 95-degree heat. And so if you're a neighbor, bring them a nice tea, say thank you. Hopefully it'll be done soon.
I don't have my gavel anymore. What happened to that?
Oh, well, they took your
The last
gavel.
year and a half.
Get a motion to
You were
close.
using it too often.
Yeah, is there a motion to close the meeting? Trustee Sullivan, second trustee